It's now 4:06, so you may begin. Have a lovely afternoon. Yep. Bye for now.
Thank you very much, Anna. So, can you see my screen, guys?
Yeah. I see you on the main PowerPoint screen.
No, that's I just see Midland Golden Retriever Club presents.
Yes,
I'm viewing the bottom corner, Penny.
Have we got? I can see the 3 photographs of we 3. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So everybody, welcome to another Midland Golden Retriever Tea Time chat. I'm absolutely so excited about the chat that we've got on this evening, and I've been really looking forward to it for the last few weeks. We've got 3 of the UK's top all-round judges to come and talk to us about their view of the Golden Retriever. So I'd like to introduce Andrew Brace, who had his first boxer way back in 1963 as a teenager. He's been really involved with many, many breeds, and he's been an author, written many interesting books on dogs, and contributed to the Canine Press, and was the publisher and editor of Dogs Monthly for many years. He is approved to award CCs in approximately 80 breeds across 7 groups, and is judge of many groups as well as Best in Show. So then we've got Frank Kane, who's been involved in the dog world for roughly the same length of time. He started as a schoolboy showing Cocker Spaniels in 1960. And in 1970, he acquired his first American Cocker and produced a string of champions. He became a championship show judge in 1974 and has progressed to become one of UK's top judges. He's approved to judge the gun dog, all the gun dog breeds, and judged the gun dog group at Crufts in 2001. He's also passed to judge all groups and Best in Show. His services as a judge are much in demand worldwide, and he's recognised by the international canine body, the FCI, as a Best in Show judge. Frank's also an author and has written about Cocker Spaniels, American Cockers, as well as his book on judging the gun dog group. And he's a frequent contributor to the Canine Press. And for over a decade, he's been a commentator on the television and internet coverage of Crufts Dog Show. And then we have our lady, Patsy Hollins, with her husband. They started in the dog world in 1972 with an English setter, and have bred and owned champions in 3 breeds. She's the top UK Weimaraner kennel with over 97 UK champions owned or bred, and has had the top winning brood bitch and also the CC record holder for some time. She first judged at Bolsover in 1980 and awards challenge certificates in 45 breeds throughout 6 groups. Patsy's in demand as a judge both at home and internationally, and judged the gun dog groups at Crufts, and has judged Best in Show at general championship shows, as well as judging the terrier, utility and pastoral groups. Patsy is also an author of various books on Weimaraners, and she's also written a dog on dog breeding, and she regularly contributes to articles in the UK dog press and appears on national TV over the years. So welcome, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'd like to start by asking you our first question, which if I can start by asking you to tell us about your career in judging in dogs, and how did you make the transition from being a breed judge to being an all-rounder judge? So we can start with Andrew Brace, if that's possible. Hello, Andrew, welcome.
Hi, how are you? Now, on a technical thing, should I be able to actually see my camera on here or not? Not that it bothers me that I can't see myself, but I'm just wondering if I've got all the right buttons pressed.
I'm not sure, Andrew. I can see you okay.
Right, okay. So I'm just looking now. at Ricardo, should I press anything to get all the cameras up?
I think you just have to speak, Andrew.
Right. Now I've got Frank.
It depends on the setting of the iPad. If you have it as a speaker, only you will appear when you are speaking.
At the top it says participants. Should I click that?
Yeah, try and see, because we're not really used to using an iPad.
Okay, right. Right, okay. No, I don't want to play around with this too much in case.
But we are seeing you, and we are seeing everything, and everything is working perfectly for us.
All right. Okay. Right. Yeah. So fine. Okay. Right. Okay then. Well, making the transition from being a breed judge to being an all-rounder judge. Well, although the first breed that I actually judged was boxers, which I did as an open show because that was my first breed. I mean, the first boxer was born in '63. I actually awarded CCs for the first time in Pekingese because I'd sort of, I'd moved over from boxers to smaller, more practical breeds. Gave my first CCs in 1977 at Whelks. And as a teenager, I'd sort of realized that I rather enjoyed this judging lark. It was actually Leslie Page, who obviously was very well known to all you gun dog people. I remember him telling me when I was quite young, if I had any sort of aspirations as a judge, to try to get out of my original group as soon as possible, because people tend to pigeonhole you. I mean, Leslie himself really, sort of suffered because of this. I mean, people thought of him primarily as a gun dog man, whereas actually, I mean, he was an expert in so many different breeds. Anyhow, I took his advice and branched out to a breed that some people would think is actually similar to a Pekingese. But in reality, it's quite different in many ways, which was the Tibetan Spaniel. And then it was in 1984 that I first actually got to award certificates in boxers. So I'd sort of, spread myself a little across the groups. And then the other breeds, just sort of slowly came around. I mean, I'd shown American Cockers very briefly. I'd always had a sort of interest in the gun dog breeds, and I'd owned pointers later. And it was in 1983 that I first awarded certificates to American Cockers, which was my first sort of gun dog breed. But I mean, in those days, expanding your judging portfolio was very much a gradual thing. We had huge entries at open shows. And you basically sort of, you got invited to judge breeds at these open shows. Oftentimes, because you were there to judge specific breeds and you had other breeds sort of added on, as it were. And things just tended to sort of fall into place. And if people saw you judging a breed at open shows satisfactorily, eventually you were offered a club show. But the whole thing happened a lot more sort of organically in those days. And I don't think, I mean, there certainly wasn't the structured determination, to go after a particular breed. Things just tended to happen, basically. Yeah. So that sort of answers my question. And having done so, I'm going to twiddle around with these settings because it's annoying me that I can't see any cameras. But anyhow, that was the answer to that question, Penny, okay?
Okay, that's fine. So let me just whiz down because I've got Mr. Frank Kane.
Hello
so please tell us about your career in dogs, Frank, and how did you make the transition from being a breed judge to being an all-round judge?
Yes, you mentioned I had my first Cocker Spaniel in 1960, around 60, and I pestered my parents for a Cocker Spaniel. It grew far too large, but I showed it and I got started, and I've been in the dog world ever since. I went to Leeds University for 4 years, and by which time I was very interested in the dog world, and Leeds was a centre for lots of breed shows. So every weekend at university, I would go down to the Corn Exchange in Leeds and go to the Trent Tweed Poodle Club, the Boxer Club, the Yorkshire Collie Club. So I became, and every Saturday or Sunday at university, I would be out somewhere looking at a breed, not necessarily a gun dog breed. And I used to read the dog papers from cover to cover, reading all the judges' critiques. And so that way, I got a wide interest in many breeds. And I think that's important, not to become single-tracked. I started judging at open shows when I was just out of university in 1971 or so, 71. And obviously starting with Cocker Spaniels. And then I got some gun dog varieties. And I think I first judged Golden Retrievers around about 1974, when my best of breed winner was Rossbourne Timothy. However, I first awarded CCs in American Cockers in 1974. I also, with my partner in dogs, Pamela Gibson, we'd got a couple of very nice Cocker Spaniels. And so that was an easy transition. I was invited to give CCs in Cocker Spaniels, and then into a breed outside gun dogs. I'd owned a couple of Sealyham Terriers, 2 champions made up in partnership, and I moved into Terriers. And from there on, it was just a gradual lesson, moving on through the gun dog breeds and then getting a foot in other groups. So my first CCs in 1974 and onwards. What I would say is that, you know, if you have aspirations for an interest in other breeds, then to start learning immediately and go and watch other people judging them. And that's what I used to do every Saturday in Leeds, and here I am now, yes.
Yeah, you obviously started with quite a broad interest, whereas a lot of people that start start with a breed and a much more sort of narrow focus than you did.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, and Patsy will probably back me up in this, my father and myself were both very keen on horses and ponies, and we used to go to horse shows and pony shows from when I was about 8 years old. And then you get an eye for looking at conformation and movement and outline. And if you become interested, what might be for many other people watching paint dry, it's very interesting to look at 2 animals and compare them. So judging becomes a passion. Yeah, once a judge, always a judge.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just have to whiz down to Patsy. So Patsy, would you tell us about your career in dogs and how you made the transition from being a breed judge to being an all-rounder?
Right, well, we got married and got an English setter, and then we showed her at the Young Farmers Show and got the bug. And then we looked at other breeds within the gun dog group that had short hair that didn't need the grooming and bathing quite the same. And I said, well, I don't mind one of those GSPs or Hungarian Vishlers, but I don't want one of those grey things with the yellow eyes. And that's the one we ended up with. So you see, everybody thinks it's all about me, but actually it's all about Stephen. So, you know, we started the show, and you never think you're going to judge. But as Frank says, you sort of have an interest because through being a stock person, through being a farmer and having horses, and you just automatically get involved. And it took a great interest. And so you start judging. I can't remember dates because I'm old now and I've got Alzheimer's, so don't even ask me dates. But I started judging with English setters. And then you get asked to do other gun dog breeds, as the others said. And, you know, you would in those days, you'd have 120 golden retrievers to judge at a show when you were asked to judge another breed, and then you'd judge those as well. And so you get interested in other breeds. And I have a thirst for dogs, purebred dogs. Yeah. Purebred dogs that are bred with a passion, I have a thirst for. And our daughter used to go to the stable and say, oh, there's mice in the stable when I'm doing my horse. So we got a Norfolk Terrier because we looked at Norfolk Terriers. Well, when you get into terrier folk, it's like horse folk. They don't mess about. They tell it like it is, and you have to earn the respect. And when you first start judging terriers, they look at you, they curl the lip and they walk away. And after a couple of years, somebody would say, hello, Patsy, and you'd think, oh, flipping heck, they know who I am. This is amazing. And I was once judging somewhere in Wigan Pier, which doesn't have a pier. And they rang me up the night before and said, could you do the Lancashire Heelers? Because the man who's doing them can't come. So I said, okay. So I read the standard, judged the breed, talked to Norman afterwards, who came up and said, well, you made a sort of an all right job. And I thought, I like these folk, the real folk. And I got quite interested in heelers, which people thought was a bit odd, but I really like them. But then, of course, that gets you into another group. And suddenly you're invited to judge at open show different groups and different breeds, which is a learning process in itself. And you talk to people within the breed and you go to seminars and it teaches you every step of the way something else. And you learn from all these people that, because every time you go to a seminar, you take something else in. Yeah. Even if the seminar is not run with somebody who's that clever, they teach you something along the way. So it's that, and I love it. I love the judging now. I would give up showing completely to judge, not because I think I'm an ace judge, because I always think I can learn something every time I do, and it's lovely to find something and to be able to just find quality, and it's a great thing for me. I love it. Yeah. And it's taken me all over the world, which is amazing, and met people, you know, from everywhere, and talked to people from everywhere. And the more you do, the more you learn. Yeah, absolutely. And there's something very artistic about it, isn't there? Well, yes, I always say that if you're that personality, you're either in the clergy, you're in the theatre, or you're in dogs.
I always say that a good judge should be like classical ballet, because it's all about lines and symmetry and balance.
It is indeed balance. Yeah, totally, Frank. Wonderful. Yeah,
definitely. So, Patsy,
I've just learned something there from Frank. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. No, chat. As things come up, please feel free to talk and chat about it and debate anything that we bring up here. So, Patsy, carry on and tell us, you know, just from your story there, what sparked your interest in golden retrievers?
What sparked my interest in golden retrievers? Well, they're a gun dog. They are a gentle, loving gun dog. They're extremely pleasing to look at. And the people that you talk to in those days, the people I talk to now in golden retrievers, I have a lot of people who have, you know, a lot of people say these days, I don't like judging golden retrievers. There's no good golden retrievers. There are good golden retrievers. There are some very good golden retrievers out there in this day and age. And it's a pleasure, and it's lovely to see them all over the world. You know, you've got great ones in Britain, you've got great ones in Ireland, you've got great ones in Sweden, in Scandinavia. Well, you've got great dogs in Scandinavia, great people. But, you know, it's a breed that you judged. When I first started judging other breeds within the gun dog group, golden retrievers had the largest entry. So you had to really get your head into the golden retriever and think about them and work through them. And it was a great learning process, and it taught you so much, because, you know, they're a lovely breed, and there are some very good ones today. Then, you know, there are some that aren't as good. And I do think, well, I'm moving on to a different question, so I better not go there.
No, don't go that way, because, I think there is, as you say, we do often have some of the bigger entries at open shows.
Yeah.
And I think
you don't as much as you, I mean, you don't as much as you used to, but you still have. But I mean, I suppose coming from a setter and a setter, a retriever, you know, it clicks your interest, and they're a very striking dog. So you're there, aren't you?
Yeah, very much so. And I think sometimes when you have got a bigger entry of Goldens, this isn't necessarily meant to be an insult to the breed, but sometimes you can get quite a lot of grayscale in the judging, you know, where you get quite a lot of dogs that are very similar in quality and type. And so I find that you really sometimes need to look very hard at what you're actually judging. You know, I think there's
well, that's it, isn't it? You have to concentrate, which is when you have those numbers, you have to concentrate. So it trains your eye to a great extent. And then you come out and chat with people, and all the time it's a learning process, and it's that passion that we all share. And that's what we get from breeding and producing and judging purebred dogs. As a judge, that is your job, to find something that fits the standard and has the balance and the quality, and that's dark quality that sets it apart. And it's something that you have to find, and that's what's so rewarding about judging.
And you get that from golden retrievers.
Definitely.
Great. Frank, would you like us to put your photos up whilst you answer this question?
Yeah, well, I'll start talking, then you think if it's appropriate, just flash them up and I'll do a bit of talking. But I was fortunate I live in the northeast. I'm in North Yorkshire, further up than Patsy. And it was a strong golden retriever area. And my first best in show is a small show in the country, was given by Miss Harrison, who used to own Boltby Skylon. And we also had my father took us to an agricultural show, and I wandered away from the horses and I went round the dogs, and I saw, my father came, we saw golden retrievers being judged, and there was a young lady winning almost every class, going to the ringside and taking over another dog from her parents. And she was a strapping country girl, and my father said, she's a grand lass. What a good job she's making with those dogs. And do you know who it was? She was called Frida Marshall.
Oh, really?
Frida Metcalf, who later became Frida Marshall. And you know, that's the first time they were a prominent kennel. Also, we had in the area, we had other good people. And the first time I went to Crufts, I was on the same bus as John Raymond, and traveling with him was a wonderful golden retriever bitch on the screen now, who went that day. She travelled on the back seat of the bus, and later on when the gun dog group at Crufts. And she, I thought, was a marvellous model. And so we lived in a good golden retriever area. That's how I became interested in the breed. Many good ones in the area. They used at that time to be a sort of north-south divide in type.
Oh, there was.
The northern type and the southern type, the Boltbys versus the Canberras and so on. I think nowadays things have changed. We're much more of a hybrid, a mixture of bloodlines. But I was very fortunate, and you got on the screen now a Rossbourne Timothy. In 1974, at a big country show, an open show, he won the postgraduate class, and the open class was won by Mrs. Metcalf Senior, handling Gainsbar Fiona. She was a show champion. Yeah. And I had these two for best of breed, and I plumped for the young dog, who was in great form and still young. And of course, he went on to become a champion. So I got, I got a good schooling by two very good people. We also had the Janville Harrison. Janville, Mrs. Harrison with the Janvilles.
Janville, yes.
Yeah. And and I'll talk perhaps a little bit later about the dogs I consider have been my models in the breed and cover that. But I was fortunate to be brought up, like Patsy, the Rossbourne's quite close to where Patsy lives now.
Yes.
So if you get good breeders in the area, they'll always talk to you. You could ask them questions, and that's how you learn. And that's how I became passionate. And now my family has a golden retriever now. My family have a bitch puppy, a young bitch now, from Anne Whitby. They're on the beach in Hoyley. very nice and wonderful character. And when you've had a day judging golden retrievers, you know why people are passionate about them, because they're the most lovely natured breed. Wonderful to be with, and you can understand people's passion for them. They're a great breed, and they're high on my list of favourites.
Could I come in there and just say that first picture you showed of that bitch of Frida Marshall's? It's not the greatest picture in the world, but look at that golden retriever. Look at that fabulous top line. Look at the leg length. She's got a short line. You know, it's bloody cracking.
Not cranked into shape, freestanding, four square.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unexaggerated in her angulation.
Absolutely.
And that's a picture of balance. She had a slightly wavy coat, and she stood and wagged her tail, and she was a beautiful bitch. And I think that's going back to the 60s.
Well, looking back at that photograph, which is not great, I would have loved to have seen that animal because it looks a fabulous golden retriever.
It was a marvellous bitch. And I think, can I just say something about, because Frida Marshall died last year.
Hello.
Rather sad that she didn't get much notice in the dog press.
Hello.
She didn't get much notice in the dog press, but what a contribution they made. Not only did they bring this group winner, but they also bred a reserve group winner in Maureen Anderson's Gainsbar Fanfare of Rashid. So what a clever breeders. We should give credit to that. Yeah. Anyway, enough of that. Sorry to hog it.
I think there's also something about the floret that you can see that when we talk about the colour golden, when you see a really good golden coat, it kind of has those gold threads going through it. And even in this picture, which is obviously not such a good picture.
Okay.
Golden.
Yeah,
well, because it's annoying me that I can't see any of the small screens.
Can you see the big screen, Andrew, with the photos on?
I've got the big one. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, but we cannot see you.
Right. Well, okay. You can't see.
No, we cannot see you, Andrew. You are blank.
Gosh, hang on. So I'm blank. So what should I be pressing here then?
I think one of the things that you can do is just leave the session and try and reconnect again and see if it's something about the connection. Now we can see you.
There you are.
Welcome back.
There you are. You're there.
Where am I? Because all I can see at the moment is I've just got Penny in the corner. Is that all I should have? Or should I have you all?
Can you see the presentation also?
Yes, I can see one of Penny's PowerPoint slides with me in Milan.
Yeah, so Patsy, tell me something. You have an iPad. What did you do to put all the pictures on?
Well, there was something about a gallery, and I mean, I can't even find that now.
Just talk, Andrew, because you come up. I think that's all we can see.
So,
Andrew, so what sparked your interest in golden retrievers?
Right, what sparked my interest in golden retrievers? Now, yeah, you see, this camera thing isn't activating at all, is it? I don't know why that should be.
People can hear you and all your thoughts, Andrew. They can hear you.
Right, okay. Well, we'll have to try to sort that out later. Basically, you know, I mean, I started off showing at the local sanctioned, limited and open shows in South Wales, of which there were many. And, you know, we would go to these little shows and we'd stay for the entire day. So you'd be surrounded by a variety of different breeds. And my first sort of conscious memories of Goldens were actually a dog and bitch that were both owned by Joy Pritchard, who was fairly local to me. And this was at a time when daughters Caroline and Julie were very, very small children. And they had this dog called Coilan Grenadier, who was a handsome, masculine dog who was always in the frame at these little shows. Whilst they had a bitch called Medurine Delith, bred by Mrs. Ballinger, who again was local. And she was sort of as feminine as Grenadier was masculine. But you know, to my sort of uninitiated eye, they were both extremely impressive Goldens. And they both, you know, did a lot of winning at the local shows. So I sort of kind of got an interest there. And then I first met this very, very impressive, elegant, classy lady called Muriel Hathaway on a flight from Birmingham to the north of Ireland to judge a little open show, you know, when we would do that to go to open shows. And that was the first time I'd really sort of got to know Muriel. And also on the same flight was Pat Jones, who had the Portuguese water dogs, previously in bearded collies. And this trip actually sparked Muriel's interest in the Portuguese water dogs. But yeah, it was basically, you know, just being stimulated by the local dogs that I've mentioned. And then, you know, getting further involved through the friendship that developed with Muriel.
Yeah, yeah, and of course she was her and Fred was such an important part of Midland Golden Retriever Club.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I wish I could sort this problem out with the cameras. This is really annoying me. But maybe I think Anna's sending me a message here at some point. Oh, hang on. Oh, Josh Henderson. He's now sending me technical advice. Right. He's very good at that. Okay, yeah. At the bottom you see, okay, right. Anyhow, you carry on with the others and I'll play around with this.
Yeah, okay, you don't want to speak about any of your dogs so far, no?
Well, no, because I don't really think it's relevant to that question. Okay. You know, I think they really fall under the question that you ask about, you know, dogs that you have in your mind's eye, because obviously the start, for me, the one that sort of captured my imagination at a higher level was Royal Pal of Catcombe. Okay. And I mean, this was the bitch that I remember seeing. I think it must have been at one of the all-breed shows in the south of England, but I remember seeing this bitch come into a group, and you know, she made me sort of stop and stare, because she had this courage and movement. She was a fairly sort of reasonably dark color. But I just remember seeing this bitch who was so sound, so animated, and just had something about her. And then, you know, this was kind of round about the same time, you know, that I saw Christopher for the first time. And we'll talk about Christopher a little bit later, because that really falls under one of the other questions, I think.
That's great, Andrew. That's great. So scan back down here a bit further. So Frank, who were your mentors?
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Josh. I've now got all the other cameras on.
Good.
Yes. Yes, well, I was very fortunate to live in the area of the great all-rounder Bobby James. He lived up near near Newcastle, and he attended a lot of the local shows, and I would always chat to him, and he would talk to me. So he was a great mentor, not only about any specific breed, but about judging in general, and the importance of looking at the whole dog and taking in the whole balance of things. That was great. Also, you know, I was very fortunate, as I say, to have good golden retriever breeders in the area. And I was, you know, always wanting to talk to them and wanting to know a bit more. And they would answer my questions, because I was keen, a bit precocious perhaps, but I was keen to learn, and they appreciated that. And I would travel to shows with them sometimes to watch people judging. So, you know, I always think if you want to learn about a breed, go and talk to people whom you respect, you have good ones, and you learn from them. And that's a great way forward. So Bobby James, and then local specialist judges. I consider myself lucky in that respect, yes.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think in those days, because transport was much more difficult and people didn't have cars and things, people did tend to buddy up, didn't they, and go on coaches or on the train together. And that often made very good friendships, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, with it, yeah. Patsy, who were your mentors in Golden Retriever?
Well, I think coming from English setters has to be Val Foss, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously. I think she was the one. And Joan, I had a lot of time for Joan Tudor. I thought she was lovely. And she spoke so down to earth and sensibly when you spoke with her. I listened to her. And that was always good. I think, yeah, I also used to, I sort of got involved in when people couldn't mate their Golden Retrievers. I got involved with mating dogs for people. Bernard Gatherell's champion dog, whose name escapes me. You know Bernard?
Governor.
Yes. Yeah. I used to, and so I was around and other people as well, and I was around a lot of golden people through that, which again gives you such an insight into the breed, because you're talking informally and you're listening informally, and so you're hearing things and you just pick it all up, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, I did, because I had that thirst to do that, I suppose. So yes, I think that's probably, well, Joan Tudor sort of spoke the same language perhaps as me a bit. She was a bit down to earth and grounded and just said it like it is, which was good, because that's how you learn.
Yeah, we've just been very privileged to be able to post the interview that Andrew did with her.
I haven't seen that yet, but hopefully I will
YouTube.
get to see it this week. Yes, you've sent me a link to it, or whatever it is you've sent.
Yeah,
so
that very much comes across a very open, honest sort of approach to things. Yeah. And Andrew, who were your mentors in the breed?
Well, as I said, Muriel, I think, would have to sort of assume the role as the first, sort of serious key golden person on that level. Having sort of, started off mixing with the Pritchard family.
Yes.
Muriel was quite special, as you all know.
Yeah.
And then, of course, although she wasn't actually a Golden Retriever person per se, as regards sort of, teaching me about, sort of related breeds, Gwen Broadley was someone who I had, the greatest respect for. In latter years, she became a personal friend. She was a great teacher, Gwen, because she did it all in such a very sort of understated kind of way. And then in addition to Gwen, of course, there was the contact that I had with Joan. And although we weren't sort of close buddies, whenever I had the opportunity, we would talk about the breed. And then, of course, through the auspices of the Midland, I got the opportunity to do the interview that we were talking about, which was fabulous.
Yeah.
And then, that was back in sort of 2005. And, we sort of always maintained contact. And she was, as Patsy said, Joan was just so down to earth. And, people probably outside the breed didn't quite sort of get her, because, she came across as, rather sort of plummy and very proper. But of course, she really was quite naughty in so many ways, and had a very sort of wicked sense of humor. In fact, we were just chatting the other day with David Craig, and he told me a very amusing story about Joan when he was on one of his very early Scandinavian judging trips, and the other judges had all gone off to bed, and it was just Joan that was left up. And he'd never met Joan before. He knew of her, obviously. But she just marched up to him, you know, and I mean, she was like a big deal, you know. Yeah. This was Mrs. Tudor of golden fame. And basically said, I think it was probably Mrs. Woolley. Anyhow, one of the Labrador ladies had obviously told Joan about David. I'm not quite sure what they told her, but anyhow, she said, "Oh yes, I've heard about you. Aren't they boring going to bed? Do you like a gin and tonic?" and he ended up in Joan Tudor's bedroom drinking gin and tonic, you know, this very sort of overawed young man. You know, that was just sort of so typical, and perhaps something that some people would find surprising. But actually, going back to the kind of mentor thing, one of my most treasured possessions is actually an email that I had from Joan following my judging of the open. I did an open show for, I think it was the Southern Breed Club.
Yeah.
And anyhow, having read my critique, I had this lengthy email from Joan, sort of critiquing my critique, as it were, and being pleasantly complimentary. And that's something I still have in a file to this day, and something that I treasure. So yeah, she was obviously a big influence.
And it's funny because you say, oh, she came across as being plummy, but she didn't actually view herself as being plummy at all, did she?
Well, not at all. And I mean, that comes across loud and clear in the interview we did with her.
Absolutely.
Back in 2005, you know, she thought she was very, very much sort of, you know, below the salt, as it were.
Yeah.
But no, other people thought otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Andrew. So now, why aren't we moving? So personally, I feel that a good all-rounder makes an excellent judge. They're untangled with breed politics, and they don't get hung up on specific points of construction, so that you really can appraise the dog with less bias and judge the whole animal. But what in your opinion what value does an all-rounder bring to the breed? Do you want to start off, Frank?
Yeah. Right. What does an all-rounder bring to the breed? There used to be a saying that all non-breed specialists judge for soundness and balance, and the breed specialists judge for breed-specific points. Well, I'm not going to agree with that sort of separation, rather stereotyping, because I think it's very important that before you go and give out awards in breeds, you have to be thoroughly aware of breed type. It's no good having a sound dog which lacks breed type. Absolutely. And if I, you know, in early days of judging, I might ask someone afterwards, what did you think of the dog I gave best of breed to? And they might say, well, it's an all-rounder's dog. That was, to me, that was the worst thing you could say, because it's just sound but lacking in type or quality. So I think that's very important. One of the things that, you know, I have to say, golden retrievers are a huge breed everywhere in the world. And it's very, it must be quite difficult for breed specialists, especially in England, going into the breed where they know all the dogs, know all the breeding. It's very important that you have to separate yourself from everything and judge the dogs as you see them. Forget friends, forget pedigrees, forget the you know, similar breeding to your own. Judge the dogs. It's easier for someone not in the breed to do that. I think it's also very important for me Bobby James said, before you step in, back and look at the whole dog. See its balance, and see its shape, and take in the whole dog, the whole shape of the dog. And that for me is very important. And I think that comes. However, you know, construction, you know, an awareness of, for me, good anatomy, correct angulation, and balance. The main thing. When I'm walking down a line of dogs, the first thing I'm looking at is this the correct shape for the breed? Whether it's a golden retriever or a dandy Dinmont or a wire fox terrier, is it the right shape for the breed? And that, as I'm only speaking for myself as a non-breed specialist, that's what I like to look for. And then, as Bobby James suggested, when you've taken in the whole dog, please, then you can go in and concentrate on the fine details. Yep.
Yeah.
So, sorry about that.
It's all right.
Sorry about that. Anyway, yes. So taking in the whole dog, yeah. And I think you know, you might get several types in golden retriever. We'll talk about type later.
Yes.
But you know, if you have an eye of what you like for balance and type, that's the first step forward for me, taking in the whole dog. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Frank. Patsy.
What do I think a non-specialist brings? And I like that term because I don't consider I'm an all-rounder. I consider I'm a non-specialist, as Frank's pointed out. And I agree with a lot of what Frank says. I do think that there is that, and I understand and totally agree what you say about a specialist type and a non-specialist soundness, and it's not as black and white as that. However, that does come into it because particularly when you look at golden retrievers, and this is really not, it's a bit controversial. Well, they don't do well in groups because breed specialists get hung up on something. They don't like that kennel, they don't like that colour. There's always something, and it's the same with every breed to a certain extent, but it is very prevalent in golden retrievers that they go in with an agenda, whereas you're non-specialist. And if you do judge a lot of breeds, you have to have broad shoulders. You have to be able to go in there and say, I don't care who you are, whether you're my best friend or my worst enemy, whether I've used your dog at stud or I haven't. You know, this is not gonna, it's got to be the right dog that goes up. And that's what you should be doing. Whereas you do get a lot of these people with an agenda and they pick up on something. And this is why we're getting golden retrievers coming into groups that are actually, you look at them and you think, how did they end up with that? Because somebody else thinks that, you know, they don't like that kennel, they win too much or whatever. Well, it's not about that. It's about judging the whole dog, as Frank says. And balance is so important. And you know, so many people look at golden retrievers and say, oh, the long and the low. And there's an awful lot that are long and low. And I think that sometimes when you judge one breed, you don't learn enough. You know, and I'm not talking any golden retrievers here, but when you get somebody who judges one breed, they say, oh, you know, it's a lovely dog because it flies round the ring. And it might have dreadful shoulders, and they actually don't understand shoulders. You learn that as you go along. You learn that through going to seminars, listening to people like Frank, for instance, who has great knowledge. You go and you listen and you learn along the way. And when you judge other breeds, you learn idiosyncrasies within some of the different breeds, like a short-legged breed with their different fronts. They still have a wraparound shoulder. Things like that, which you're never going to learn if you judge one breed. And if you just judge golden retrievers, you often get hung up on a point. Oh, well, I don't like when they're too dark. Well, no, it's not about that. It's about judging the whole dog and looking at the dog. And I've put up golden retrievers. And I've put up blonde golden retrievers. And yes,
they're
I do
all
think
in the standard.
Absolutely. They're all the same standard, and you should go to seminars and learn about that breed and learn about the idiosyncrasies of that breed. And that's what we do. And then you talk to people within the breed, and you come out of judging and somebody comes up to you and said, what was it about that dog you liked over that dog? And you can justify it. At that point, you've got to be able to justify it and say exactly why it was. And if you can't do that, and a lot of breed judges can't do that, because they do go in with an agenda. So I do think it is important that you have a balance of specialists and non-specialists, because then, as Frank said, balance of the dog is overall, and you're not going to get balance if you've got short legs and a long body, but it's a blonde, or it's a bit, it's lacking lacking depth because it's a deep colour. You've got to judge the whole dog, and you've got to go on it, and it's looking for that star quality as well, quality of the dog, as well as the whole thing. It's balance, it's construction, it's quality, it's star quality as well as that. It's other handler and the dog working together. It's the whole package that's important, and you're going to get that from both angles. And your established good breed specialists are going to contribute greatly, but they've got to have broad shoulders. And because you're such a big breed, there's a lot of people that don't have broad shoulders, and you've only to watch Golden Retriever judging, whereby they stand and look for so long that they take them apart and they can't put them back together.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Patsy. I mean, there's a few things that I totally concur with. I have said to people that have been training for judging that when you do enter the ring, the only obligation that you have is to be a best friend to your breed, because you really, that's what you should be doing. By being a best friend to a person, you're actually destroying the breed, because
well, we're all here to put up dogs that conform to the standard, and we should show respect for that standard by doing the seminars. And the more seminars you do, people say, like some the lady's died now, but they called her the seminar queen, but she learned. You learn every time you go. So you should, and it's good to enhance that within, even if you never want to judge another breed.
Yeah, you learn by seeing the differences as well between breeds.
Absolutely.
Even if you only look at the retriever breeds, when you start to pick about the key points about head construction and actually you then start to learn an awful lot more about your own breed, because you start considering other things about
absolutely.
And I think that both you and Frank are absolutely totally right, that I think you develop a better line for the profile of a dog the more different breeds you look at. The more you start to have that outline, and that's very important. And I think that's somehow got lost within the breed. But anyway, thanks for that, Patsy. That's great. Andrew.
Well, I mean, really speaking, Penny, your question does rather sort of hit the nail on the head. It's if we've settled on the term non-specialist rather than all-rounder, it should be a lot easier for people outside a breed to judge it without bias and be free of the knowledge of winning form, ownership, breeding, who's judging next week, etc., etc., etc. That's the theory of it. My concern, and it's only a mild concern, is that now that we're living in an age, as proved by today, where there are much more educational events. I think it's important for these non-specialists or embryo all-rounders or whatever you want to call them, they have to acknowledge that they are not breed specialists.
Yes.
And I use the term breed specialist deliberately, because a breed specialist is something that is actually quite rare. We have a lot of breeder judges. They are not all breed specialists. To me, a breed specialist is someone who has actually earned that title within their breed.
Yes.
And that's not just a breeder judge. But we have to accept that whilst we should be fully familiar with all the points that contribute to breed type, we are not specialists. And as such, I think we should go out there with the priority of the overall picture, harmony, balance, construction, soundness, and authentic temperament. And what you find with the, and I mean, it's you know, it's easy to lapse into the parlance of all-rounders, which I will do on this occasion. I think all-rounders, the immediate approach is slightly different. We would walk in and immediately see an overall picture. The breeder judge so often will go in and see a head or a coat or a tail or feet.
Point.
Yeah.
First off, and they, because of their limited experience and being mainly immersed in their own breed, they haven't quite developed the art of looking at that overall picture. And the other point that I think is important, I think, and obviously we're talking about when we're coming to championship shows and large entries and judging over a period of time, I do think that the all-rounder has a responsibility and the ability to actually comment quite legitimately on the state of a breed and the direction it's going, if they find that there is something leaping out at them as a fault that's becoming endemic.
Yes.
Now, Anne Rogers-Clark, who was a very famous professional handler in the States and later a very revered judge, she had this wonderful expression when she referred to the drag of a breed, which was a fault that was appearing more and more frequently in a breed, that it was turning into a problem.
Yeah.
And she had, her philosophy was, when you judge large entries in a breed, and she used to judge a lot of national specialties in a variety of breeds, if you felt that a breed was or had acquired a drag, that when you judge the breed, you should penalize that fault very heavily. And when you found dogs that excelled in that area, you should reward them, perhaps slightly disproportionately, because it's only in this way that you can convey to the people in the breed, look, you're getting a problem with fronts, top lines, whatever. So I do think that, you know, the all-rounder, when you get to a certain level, there is a responsibility to go beyond just placing dogs in order of merit and handing over cards.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
A real value added thing to be able to do that.
Well, I think so. And I mean, in my experience, you know, people who are serious about the breed, you know, in conversation with them afterwards, they will actually say, well, you know, yeah, you've got a point, but, you know, we don't really say it.
Yeah.
And I mean, under the topic of some of your later questions, I am sure that we will be addressing certain drags.
Thank you for that, Andrew. I do think it is difficult when people only judge one breed, because once they do get to the point where they award CCs in that breed, they may only judge once every few years.
Yeah.
In a large breed where we have 42 sets of tickets, they may be judging only every 3 or 4 years. And I personally think that's not enough to maintain your skill of judging, you know.
No, exactly.
That's sort of by the by for me. So, Patsy, do you want to start off by explaining what type means?
Type is what makes that dog fulfill its purpose. It was, you know, when we breed a pedigree, a purebred dog, when we breed a purebred dog, we breed it to fulfill or our ancestors bred it to fulfill a purpose. And it's our responsibility to make sure that the points that they're bred for are preserved. Okay, so you might have show golden retrievers and you might have working golden retrievers, and they may differ, but that's a shame. But we have this inverted snobbery within a lot of the gun dog breeds that, oh, well, they only work them because it's not constructed well enough to be shown. And, oh, well, they only show it because it's no ability to work. And actually, I come from a breed, Weimaraners, which are a dual purpose breed. So the ones that show with the ones that work, which is not the case in Goldens. Your type is something that sets it apart from a different breed. So this is not the same shaped head as the Labrador, nor does it have the barrel ribs of a Labrador. It's not just the coat that's different, it's the whole shape. Okay. And this is what sets it apart. You know, if you drive a Mercedes, if you drive a Land Rover, right? If you drive a Defender, it's a workhorse. If you drive a Vogue, it's a princess that goes and picks the kids up from school. And if you drive the big one, it's a workhorse, but it's something that's going to look after you when you're traveling. So they're all the same breed, but they're all different types within that breed. So you have got retrievers that are all bred to do the same job, but they are doing different jobs within that structure of being a retriever. So they all are slightly different. Yeah. So you know, they always talk about a Labrador as having a head, a tail, and a coat because it's a water dog and it's cold water. Your flat coat is racy with substance. Your golden is there to retrieve. He is gentle. He does various jobs, and so the structure is different within the same retrieving aspect.
Thank you. Andrew, can you explain what type means? Anything to add?
Well, I mean, to me, it's quite sort of concise, really, Penny. I mean, to me, type is basically a combination of integral component parts that contribute to making that breed individual, whether we're talking about golden retrievers or Pekingese or beagles or whatever. And I mean, this basically consists of head, size, outline, coat, character, movement that are correct for the breed. And I mean, the word is used in several contexts, but when I talk about a dog having type, breed type, I refer to it as being totally representative of its breed in the context of the requirements of the breed standard.
Yeah, yeah. And not, it separates it, that's where it separates it from other breeds, isn't it? And then
absolutely.
And then we do unfortunately also then talk about type as in subdivisions within the breed.
Yeah, well, you know, that's and we've all been guilty of it.
Yes.
You know, myself included. But I always try, you know, whether I'm conversing or whether I'm writing, I do try to avoid using the word in that context because it's not actually type we're talking about. We're talking about different stamps or styles within a breed.
Yeah.
And there again, you know, style again is a danger word.
Yeah.
Because when you mention style, people can sometimes misinterpret that. And thinking, you know, style in the context of glamour, you know. So I mean, I prefer to talk about different stamps within a breed, rather than types, because I think it's probably a little bit safer.
I think that type is, you can't have different types. You have, as Andrew says, a stamp within that breed. You can't have different types within the breed, surely.
I mean, you know, one of the biggest sort of red flags to me is when somebody says, "Not my type."
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can have a favoured stamp, which is presumably, if you are a breeder judge of that breed, it's what you breed. And it's obviously the stamp of dog that you like to have in your kennel. But you know, when you come to judge, you know, that gets put to one side, and you are working with the breed standard, not what you'd like to have in the backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. Frank, have you anything to add?
Yeah, I think Patsy and Andrew have said a lot. I think, you know, breed type, if I put in a critique full of breed type, I'm suggesting that the dog has many of the features which make that breed recognizable. They're the features that are laid down in the breed standard. What sort of head should the breed have? What sort of ribs should the breed have? And so on. However, I do think that breed type, knowing breed type, you have to go a bit further than just knowing the breed standard. And I think you can get an in-depth knowledge of breed type by going to watch judging at shows, watch different judges judging them, and then you get the idea of different stamps of dog, which are slightly different, which are different, but still fit the breed standard. There's different styles. So, but for me, you're judging every dog that comes in front of you, not by the color of it, but how well it is close to the breed standard.
Yeah.
And having those features which make it breed typical. Yeah. Patsy touched upon dogs which were fit for function. All the breed standards were originally written with the dog's function in mind. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that. But we must go for getting a depth of knowledge which gives you breed type and going watching judges judge. If you're a specialist, that's easy. If you're a non-specialist, then you have to put yourself out and go and watch different breeds to get, you know, I think the best non-specialist judges judge like a specialist in that they have a knowledge, and their dogs end up not only being sound dogs, but really typey dogs. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that kind of takes this sort of seamlessly into the next question, Frank, which is when assessing a pedigree dog, is it enough just to understand the breed standard, or are there other areas of knowledge that are equally or if not more important to understand? And I mean, you've all alluded to that background of knowing purpose and function behind there.
I think, first of all, if I'm giving a seminar, I'll say there's two things you need to go before you set foot into a ring. One is a good working knowledge of conformation and movement.
Yes.
And the other one is that you need to know the breed standard. They're the two basics. And I think, really, I do think sometimes the conformation and anatomy and movement is still a mystery, which is not fully understood by many judges. And you can see that by where they put their hands on a dog when they're going over it. You have 2 minutes to assess a dog's conformation, and therefore it should be purposeful. So that's very important. And it's on the move, that good knowledge of conformation and movement. When the dog moves, for me, I look at a dog and I want it to be the right shape. And when they move, I want the shape to be held on the move. And so that's very important for me. Yes. So conformation and movement, the breed standard, so you're assessing every dog against the breed standard. Yeah. They would be, for me, in a nutshell, the main basics. And of course, the in-depth knowledge of breed type. Yeah. Okay.
Andrew, can you add anything?
Well, not really. I think Frank's covered it very well. I mean, and I would just, you know, sort of endorse what he says about it. It is vitally important to know what a breed was bred to do, and if it is a dog that was bred to do a job of work, and most of them were, other than the breeds that were bred to be beautiful looking companions. then, you know, we need to understand what the dog was developed to do. We are guided by the breed standard. And I mean, the only thing I would say about our breed standards, and possibly having a little bit more knowledge, whilst most of the breed standards do their best to describe movement, I don't think a lot of them actually encapsulate the broader subject of carriage. And, you know, the standards will tell you sort of where they should put their feet down, but a lot of them fail in that they don't really paint a picture of how a dog holds itself, you know, and how it moves as an overall picture. And this is something that you can only learn from, you know, sort of studying, you know, videos, or preferably in real life, you know, of great ones going, because all breeds have a way of going and a way of holding themselves, you know, which isn't necessarily covered in the breed standard.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Patsy.
Yes, well, obviously, what they've said is absolutely right. I think that when we're assessing a pedigree dog, what we're doing is saying, is this dog fit for function? Is it constructed so it can lead a long, happy life in whatever sphere it is asked to perform? Has it got the personality to take it up a step? And is it in good condition? When, as a judge, in my view, my responsibility is to say to that, to say this dog is of quality that can take this breed forward and therefore bred from. So if I'm going to award it a prize, I expect that it should have that quality, because if you know, it's like I once was judging not golden retrievers, but a breed at Crufts, and I had to withhold in postgraduate dog, and somebody said after me afterwards, "You were very brave." I said, "No, it wasn't brave, and it wasn't nice to do, but these dogs were shocking examples of the breed in terrible condition and badly constructed. And if I'm going to give a prize card out, I am saying that dog is worthy of taking this breed forward and being bred from, and I'm not prepared to do that with those two dogs." No. It didn't please me. It didn't make me feel like I was some clever person. It saddened me greatly, and it saddens me when I watch judges putting dogs up that shouldn't be put up.
Yes.
In this country, we don't grade them. We can't. There's too many. But I like that grading. And when you judge abroad, yes, you grade them and you say what attributes that dog has and what attributes it doesn't have. And the people generally take it really well. Well, they wouldn't take it well in this country because they all know too much. But, you know, abroad, they do take it well. And hopefully they learn from that.
They very much value their reports, actually, with the FCI system. You know, they really do listen to what you say in the reports.
They do indeed, and and hopefully they take it on board. And you try to, as a judge, you try to, as Frank said in your critique, try to explain why you think this dog has the type and the qualities to take this breed forward, because that is our responsibility. It's not about going in there and performing the quickest, the slowest, the most glamorous, the most whatever. It's about doing your job, judging those dogs to the best of your ability, whoever's on the end of the lead. But they've got to work together. It's got to be a whole package, and they've got to be worthy of the quality to take the breed forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Patsy. So that takes us up onto our next question quite nicely. When you read the breed standard, is there anything you would change or add to it, Andrew?
Well, you know, the Golden's breed standard in the UK, it's not the most detailed. And whilst I don't think standards should necessarily be sort of excessively wordy and restrictive, because I do like to read standards and know that there's a little bit of sort of flexibility there. I think there probably are a couple of gaps. And I mean, the one thing that when I first started judging the breed, I found strange was that there's not really a description of eye shape. in our standard. And when you think that the majority of people who, you know, buy their first golden retriever probably buy it on seeing the most heavenly face and soft expression, I always found that very, very puzzling. Yeah. And even more puzzling when I got more sort of seriously into the judging side was when I started judging in the States and read their standard for the golden retriever, which is meticulous in its detail when you come to talking about eye shape and eye placement. You know, and forgive me for saying it, but it's that area where, in my opinion, some American dogs do actually fall short. But you know, do you not think that's a conundrum? But of course, you know, Frank is the man we should be asking about breed standards, because he sits on the relevant committee, don't you, Frank?
I'm chairman of the breed standards committee.
Oh, sorry, chairman.
But I'm very glad that you brought up the about eye shape, because last year I had a message from Jenny Sweden saying, Frank, what shape should a golden retriever's eyes be? And we had this long debate, and I said, really, it is a shortfall in the breed standard, and there is no mention of the eye shape. And she said, are they almond shaped? I said, no, they're not almond shaped. No, they're not almond shaped. I would say, and I went through and looked at things and looked at my glossary. I think, and this might open a wild debate now, and I hope it doesn't. I think they are oval in shape. They're not round, they're oval. Actually, all eyes are round. It's the
lids.
The lids.
Lids. Yes, it's the
aperture.
It's the apertures which determine the shape. And I think the golden retriever has oval shaped eyes. I don't know whether that's anyway, but that is a shortfall. But I can just tell you this: what many people don't know is that if breed clubs think that the breed standard is not adequate and they want to alter something to make it better, then it's within the remit of the clubs to propose changes and to get them agreed within the clubs, and then send forward that suggestion to the breed standards committee. Things can be altered, but I'm glad Andrew picked up immediately on the one I was going to talk about, and that is the eye shape of the breed. Okay.
So Andrew said very much about Muriel Hathaway, and I actually did my teaching course with her, and she talked an awful lot about the shape of the eye, and she said the golden retriever's eye should not be round or almond. It is somewhere in between, and it's the eye of a clown, and I always remember that. And they are somewhere, they're a transition between round and almond when you look at a really good head. It's an interesting thing, though, that it isn't quantified. And that may be because, of course, it is such an aesthetic thing, not affecting the form or function of the dog. So when the standard was originally written as a gun dog, that may be the last thing that they would have worried about. Anyway, Patsy, please.
Well, obviously the eyes. We're all on the same page here.
Yeah.
The eyes are kindly.
Yeah.
And so they're dark. The eyelid has to be fitting so that the eye, because the eyelid does have a function in the fact that it's not got to take debris in. So the eyelid that's loose is going to be a fault. The eyelid that's too tight is going to be a fault. It can't shut its eye properly. So the eyelid is important there. It doesn't give the shape of the eye, but funnily enough, when you judge abroad, you can pick out, as Andrew said, the American bred golden retrievers. They lack the moulding, the work in the head, and they all have slant eyes. And it actually says in the American standard, slant eyes are a fault. So I totally agree with you, Andrew. It's ridiculous because it actually says that in the standard, and yet you can pick them out easy enough. You just know immediately they'll have shorter per arm, high shoulder blade and slant eyes if they're American generally. And then they'll go around the ring at a rate of knots to hide the fact that the balance is not there. But yeah, no, I don't think the standard wants changing. I think people need to adhere to the standard. And remember that when they're talking about the length and the coupling, the length, we want a short loin, and the ribs are what give the length of body. So we don't want a long rib, we want shorter ribs and a short loin to give that proper length of body for the golden retriever. And we want the complementary length of leg. We do not want short legs and long bodies, because if you're going to get a long body, you're going to get a long loin.
Yeah, yeah. I think in a way the standard has allowed people to breed slightly more and more for exaggeration. There's nothing to actually focally. But that's why we keep. Yeah.
That's why all three of us keep saying you should look at other breeds as well and learn about. It's, if you've got a passion for dogs and a passion for your breed, learn about other breeds as well, because it gives you such an insight into basic construction. Whereas, you see these people, as Frank, I think it was, said, they put the hand on the dog and they have not a clue why they're putting it there. They've just seen somebody else. When I do a seminar and I run my hand down the neck of the dog and I stop at the bottom of the neck and say, why does somebody do that? And they say, and they look at you, well, the shoulders out at the bottom of the neck. Shouldn't be. You put your hand behind the shoulder blade to see how the shoulder blade's laid. Didn't see what? Anyway. Yeah.
I'll keep one thing I would just add, one thing that I sometimes feel that our breed standards are sometimes reader assumptive. They assume that the reader knows something about anatomy. For instance, it says on the body clause for the golden retrievers, short coupled.
Yes.
Now short coupled, if you think that suggests that the rib cage is long and the couplings are short. But if they don't know what short coupled means, then it's lost upon them. So we have the glossary of terms, but I do think sometimes the standards are a little bit too compact, too condensed, and assuming too much knowledge in the reader. Yeah.
Yes.
Totally agree.
Yeah, because you see in your opening paragraph, the general appearance clause of every breed standard should be vitally important. Now, you and I might, understand the same thing when we read symmetrical and balanced. But to someone else, they could have an entirely different version of those two words.
Yeah. I often think that a lot of people think those mean exactly the same thing, but they don't. Because why state both statements if you're not inferring something completely different by them?
I think it's also a shame that many people ignore or rush over the general appearance clause to get to the nitty-gritty. Because for me, when you're standing back and looking at a dog for the first time, it's the general appearance you're taking in. So those should be quite important paragraphs.
Yeah, the most important.
Yes.
Before running to the details of the head or the angulation in the shoulder, the whole dog. And I think, at seminars, people should be taught, don't rush past that, don't ignore or neglect the general appearance clause. And also, while I put my breed standards head on, this introductory clause about when a feature is required, it's only required in the right amount. We should not be saying, if long neck is wanted, we don't want giraffe necks. If good angulation is wanted, we don't want over-angulation. It is, for me, it's only been in this standard now about 4 years, and it's one of the things I'm perhaps most proud of in improving the standards, to get away from not exaggerating breed features, not getting hypertype in breeds. And I think sometimes, I'll talk about it later, there is a bit of hypertype has been brought into golden retrievers in the last 20 years or so. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I would totally agree with you. But, well, all of you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Can I just say, at the beginning, before we actually started the seminar, I mentioned a book that Andrew had written in conjunction with a lady from Canada who Anne.
No, you're talking of Anne Rogers Clark.
Yes, Anne Rogers Clark.
Who was American? She's American.
That book I refer to quite often. It doesn't go into the detailed standard. It does go into what the dog should have to perform its task, which I find really interesting.
And I mean, when we did that book, which took 2 years, and 8 million photographs, and taught me very quickly to never, ever send Annie Clark a photograph of a dog with its feet in grass, because it would be immediately rejected, no matter how perfect it was otherwise. But the object of the encyclopedia was not to go into the details of breed standards, because, you know, there were plenty of books already doing that. It was actually to go through and include as many breeds as we possibly could, but just to convey the essence of those breeds. And I mean, that was the brief, you know, that we had from the start. Andrew,
could you just tell the audience the name of your book?
Yeah, it was called the International Encyclopedia of Dogs. I will bring one to the camera.
Yeah, okay. Well,
anyway.
I have found widely reading books from different breeds and different groups and by different authors really helpful in you know, in learning.
Is this what is known as the commercial break?
This is the commercial break.
Yes, the commercial break, absolutely.
There you are. Thank you, Patsy.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
I hasten to point out that unlike Mr. Kane, I don't have a boot full of these in the car. And if anyone who's watching is lucky enough to find one on eBay at a reasonable price, snap it up, because they are actually like hen's teeth.
Great.
So it was actually published in, when did we actually publish it? It's a long time ago, 1995. Mm-hmm. 1995. But anyhow.
It is actually signed by Anne Rogers Clark, but not Andrew Brace for some reason.
Well, obviously,
for me,
you felt that Mrs. Clark was obviously a lot more important, and rightly so, Patsy.
So I think
you there, love.
I think we've already sort of touched on the next question. What's your idea of a true golden retriever, and what do you consider to be the most important features of the breed?
Well, I think that is, to me, it's extremely simple and very briefly summed up. For me, it's first of all the silhouette.
Yeah.
That has to come first. The overall balance has to be correct. Then the head and expression should be wholly typical, and the dog should move freely, accurately, showing good reach and drive with a firm top line and effortless carriage, and that's it.
Yeah, great. Frank?
Yes, well, if you put it with a photograph of Gainsbar Florette of Shire, that's pretty close to my ideal. A dog which has
Gaines, was it Florette?
There you are. What wonderful balance, body depth and leg length almost equal, short in the couplings, well angulated and balanced without being overdone, and that marvelous top line to me. And that shape has to be held on the move for me. I'm surprised, you know, I have to tell you a story about Ron Bradbury, who was also, I should have mentioned him as a mentor, down to earth, very avuncular. And he said, Frank, you'll get big classes in golden retrievers, but when you send them round, half of them will eliminate themselves immediately, because what you saw standing still, cranked into shape by their handlers, falls apart on the move. I know I'm criticized for moving dogs too much. I don't think I do. Patsy will tell you that when you judge horses, you don't put a hand on the horse.
No, that's right.
Watch them moving and how they carry the top line, where they put the legs. That's important. For me, shape and balance, a beautiful head and soft expression, nice tail carriage, and the shape held on the move. That for me. And I would like to see well, I know you're going to ask me later about the presentation of dogs. Mm-hmm. I would like to see more dogs shown on a loose lead and 3 stacked to show off their balance. And anyway, don't get me on my hobby horse. That's fine.
Patsy, how about you?
What was the question?
Yeah. What
I've lost it.
Hang on. I've lost it now. What's your idea of a true golden retriever, and what do you consider to be the most important features of the breed?
Well, obviously, what was said is absolutely accurate. Also, I would like to see the personality, that happy dog, his tail wagging, lashing his flanks rather than up in the air. Although we must forgive a teenager who's just feeling his feet and thinking he's cock of the north if he carries his tail a bit high. So, you know, you've got to remember it's an animal, it's not a machine. But this gleaming coat, whatever shade of gold it might be or blonde, is just lovely to see. It's the icing in the cake, and that lovely lashing tail denoting that beautiful, sweet personality that a golden retriever has, on top of all what the boys have said.
Yeah, I think it's one of the treasures really of our breed.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. Yeah, and you can carry on going because this is one of your pictures. Which golden retriever would you identify as your blueprint for the breed?
I would have to say that Christopher is up there. I also thought that Style Scott of Ray Skulls, I think he was that's not the greatest picture I've ever seen of him. I thought it was very striking in the ring. Beautiful dog, produced some beautiful offspring as well, I think. Yeah. He was just a lovely dog. He was really, really beautifully put together. He was always immaculate. He did stand on a loose lead. I never saw Ray string him up at all. He used to just stand and look at him. It was as if it trained him. And he was just a very beautiful dog. I think there are some dogs that I think, you know, there's a lot of people. The Norton Woods were lovely, of course, coming down from Christopher or above Christopher, which way around it was. Ooh, heck.
Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
Are we still connected?
I can hear you. Yeah, carry on going.
Well, yeah, and I think there's still good golden retrievers today, and I think that there's lots of people. I think the Archibalds in Ireland, they have produced some lovely, lovely golden retrievers. So typical, so well balanced, immaculately turned out. Obviously have to put in a lot of effort to get across the water if they're going to come to the mainland, and all credit to them, along with a lot of other people. But I think they're worth mentioning.
And there's another one that you liked.
Oh, I loved Vivaldi. I did. I thought Vivaldi was a beautiful dog. And he came down from those, I can't say it, he had Aaron
Derry.
Yeah.
Aaron Derry.
Which produced some fabulous dogs. I thought he was lovely, and came down from them.
So those are your blueprints. I don't think you've got any
they are indeed. Yeah, they're the ones that stand out in my mind.
Yeah.
That's a dreadful picture of Scott, but he was a lovely dog.
Frank.
Well, yes, I've mentioned this bitch here. 1961. You're going back 60 years. 60
I was
years.
but a baby, Frank. I wished I'd seen her.
Yes, so 60 years, and you know there were other good ones around at the time with these proportions and balance. If you go and look at some of my other photographs, there's Timothy. Not the best photograph. He looks a bit too fat and deep in the body there, but he was a lovely dog, and a masculine dog without cause and full, wonderful temperament and movement. Yeah, and I want to go to this again. Maureen Anderson's dog, again, balanced, great carriage on the move, masculine and a lovely head type. He was runner-up in the group under Gwen Broadley when she did the group, yes. Could we go on to the next one? Again,
cracking dog. Yeah.
A very nice dog. There's nice angulation. His hocks, not overdone, not in the next county. Nicely angulated, but without being overdone, and lovely neck into shoulder line, top line. They're the things I look for. Yeah,
a beautiful set of neck there, isn't there?
Nice flow of neck into shoulder, the balance of the dog. Can we go to the next one, please? Again, a lovely bitch, and again, Maureen Anderson, clever, good eye for a dog. She was a big winner. and bred by Sylvia Cochrane, a very charming lady, and a real knowledge in the breed. Yeah, thank you. And look at the, hold on, can you just go back and look at good feet? Because she had good feet. Feet and pasterns now perhaps are not as good as they used to be in some of them, I think. Anyway, let's move on. Masculine, workman-like dog. I think he was a full champion. And fit for function, but also the right, well, just a lovely quality golden retriever. Broad skull, broad without being coarse. I'll talk a little bit about heads because I think the standard Astra, a broad skull. In the bitches, sometimes I find that there's a sort of over-refinement, as though narrow skulls make them more feminine. Well, for me, that's not quite typical. They can still have some width and brain room and still be refined and feminine, okay? This is an all-masculine dog.
Yeah.
And this...
He was, yeah. Yeah, and then you see the bitch, and she's beautiful and feminine, isn't she?
I had this bitch at her first show as a 6 months puppy, and she was best puppy in show. And I don't know what happened to her. She was bred by Pat Pape, I think, in Northumberland. Came down to Jean. It may have been by her dog, I'm not sure. And lovely neck into shoulder, lovely lines, and you know, you could never mistake that for a dog, could you? Lovely, feminine. And lovely breed type for me. Yeah, these are dogs I've put up, and yeah, and I'd tell a personal little story about this one. And I think it was the Yorkshire Golden Retriever Club. This bitch was in the limit bitch class with a. When I walked around, this is the one that took my eye, and I kept thinking, I can't wait to get my hands on that. And anyway,
yeah,
I went over. It was very nice to go over, moved beautifully, and I gave her she won the CC. The co-judge and I didn't agree on best of breed, and the referee came in and decided on the dog. And the same for the reserve best in show. This bitch then went on to win at Crufts the following year. She won the limit bitch class and looked marvellous. And she won another reserve CC, but never got made up. And I felt, she came and spent the lady gave up showing, and this bitch ended up with a nice lady, Shirley from near Scarborough, ended up with her as a veteran and had a wonderful life with her. And I just think there's lots of quality bitches around. Here's one that perhaps should have been a champion and never made it. For me, look at the lovely elbow placement, the nice rear angulation, and the proportion. A lovely bitch.
Lovely proportions, isn't she?
Yeah, she is.
Proportions, yeah.
I don't know whether we've got any more. I know I'm rather...
It's all right. You've got a couple more. Yeah.
This is a dog I had at the... he was best in show at the Golden Retriever Club when I judged the males there. He was not the biggest dog in the world, but I felt him very balanced and wonderful type and great movement. He got he won the reserve CC from the junior class the first time I judged him, and he came back here and to the Retriever Club. It looks as though he got his full title as well by the look.
Yeah.
But these are
I like him very much. I think he's got the correct kind of proportion of body to the length of leg and the length of his. You know, he's not over big in the body.
Yeah. So
if you put him in silhouette, he is a golden retriever. He's no other breed.
A beautiful, kind head and eye. Beautiful mold.
Yeah, he's got a lovely eye.
Yeah. He's a dog.
Last one, I think.
This is from Crufts. From Crufts 2 years ago. Not shown by this man. Shown by a lady with colourful hair. Who was from Belgium, I think. But this bitch is from Italy, and I had 30-odd champions in open bitch, more than 60 champion bitches through the classes, and I thought this was beautiful, and she went beautifully, and she ended up as third in the group that day. She came back the following year, I think, to the Golden Retriever Club, and she was best in show at the Golden Retriever Club, which is quite something for an overseas bitch. So she's, very memorable. Yeah.
Right. I think that was yours. So let's go back up to pick up Andrew's pictures. So Andrew, your blueprints.
Yeah, well, as I said, Royal Pal was certainly one of the first that made a huge impression on me. And watching Frank's trip down memory lane there made me feel horribly guilty, because a dog that I omitted, but was one that I remembered vividly and very fondly, of course, was Stolford Happy Lad. And Peggy Robertson, who of course was just the most fabulous lady who had him. So that is one that I should have included, but didn't. So thank you, Frank, for jogging my memory about that. And then the other one, round about the same time, you've already featured in Patsy's selection, which of course was Christopher. Yeah. And I mean, the thing about Christopher was that, whenever you saw him in the ring, I talked earlier about the importance of carriage, and I mean, this dog used to hold himself, and I mean, Joan very openly admitted that, he didn't have what she considered to be a classic head for a golden retriever male. But, he had this wonderful way of holding himself. And I think she referred to in the audience that we did for you all those years ago, how she used to be mildly embarrassed because he would insist on carrying his lead in his mouth, which of course, was entirely in keeping with the purpose of the breed, and entirely charming. Yeah. But I mean, he with Christopher, when we were discussing earlier on how all-rounders look at dogs, he was the classic example of that sort of overall picture dog, who carried himself so beautifully. And then I think the next one up is another bitch that was, yeah. Now, I mean, Suzilla was slightly different in stamp from Royal Pal, but I mean, to me, type, quality, balance, a beautiful bitch, and I mean, she just radiated quality.
She's such a clever breeder, Hazel, wasn't she?
Well, I mean, she was, and I mean, again, a great character in so many ways, but I mean, she seemed to have that knack, like a lot of the great breeders, of just managing to produce that little extra class, that quality. And I mean, refinement isn't a word that we would normally associate with golden retrievers, but there was that little extra class, that little extra charisma, and I mean, Hazel certainly churned them out. And I think the other one, which is a sort of certainly a dog that really made a name for himself, is it the next one? There's the next slide, the Arundel dog.
Yeah,
Gaelic minstrel. And I mean, he was one of those that, had, it was the sort of overall merit of the dog. He was a very, very well constructed dog. As you said there, I never saw him before he went to Scandinavia, where he had a great career and was a great producer. But I mean, the angles on this dog, particularly in this picture, I think are particularly impressive.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the others are not necessarily sort of famous dogs, but they're dogs that I've personally, sort of judged and put up. This was a bitch in Sweden who got made up on the day, bred by, but I don't think she was actually handled by Henrik, but certainly bred by him. And again, type, balance, shape. I thought she was very, very impressive.
From another very clever breeder.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, he can certainly. No, I mean, this is a dog that I sort of met a few times. The first time I had him was in this open stakes class in 3 counties, which he won. Then he came over to Belfast under me, and he got the reserve ticket behind a marvelous Irish-based dog that I think we might have seen in Patsy's selection, possibly. And then as a veteran, he came back under me again to take the ticket in Best of Breed in 2017. And I mean, you know, typical Golden in that, you know, he was probably at his best when he was in the veteran class. You know, because they're a breed that lasts, they're a breed that need to be fully matured. But again, you know, balanced, well put together, good moving dog. So that was one that made a big impression.
It was
and then now at the other end of the scale, because you know I have been known to get a bit carried away with youngsters on occasions. This was the most beautiful puppy I had in Portugal. She's 9 months old in the picture. It was actually bred in Norway. And I mean, as I've said in the caption there, if I'd been judging under our system, she would certainly have been my best bitch, if not best of breed. I just absolutely loved her and thought that, you know, she had everything that I wanted as regards type, you know, the head, the angles, the shape, the balance. And it turned out that she was a granddaughter of a dog that had come over and won Best of Breed at Crufts in 2010, who Penny will know, but I'm afraid I don't. Yeah, that's just a little sort of amusing anecdote about getting the picture, because the gentleman who was handling was constantly stuffing her with bait. And, you know, I said, look, she has a beautiful head. You know, I need to do justice to this in the photograph. So I asked my steward if she'd just take the bait off the handler and just walk towards the table and click, and there's your picture.
Wonderful. You've just caught a gorgeous.
Yeah. And I thought she was beautiful. And I mean, in our conversation, our telephone conversation last night, Penny, you did tell me that she didn't sink without trace, and she went on and did quite well. So that's good news.
Multiple titles.
And I mean, I threw this in deliberately because, you know, never in a million years when I judged a large entry in the States did I expect to find this. Because, you know, a lot of the dogs I had there weren't particularly of the type that appeals to me. You know, a lot of them were lacking in the head and expression department. And I mean, in the Best of Breed class, this young bitch came in and she just blew me away. I mean, there was nothing in the entry like her. But I thought to myself, my God, you know, this bitch could win anywhere in the world. And where I said to the lady, okay, I don't want her stacked. I don't want her tail pull out. I said, just let her walk into a stack, stand in front of her. Oh, but I need a tail. I said, forget about her tail. I don't care where her tail is. I'd rather this than the constantly wagging, because, you know, when you photograph dogs that are wagging all the time, I dock them all, you know, terrible. Labradors are the worst in the world. But I mean, this is there just to illustrate the point that there are in the USA some beautiful golden retrievers.
Yeah. And then your last.
And this is the last one, and this is another youngster that I nearly went, you know, really silly with. It was at Birmingham National. She was entered in junior and another either 1 or 2 classes, and I thought she was quite beautiful. I had no idea who the lady was or where she'd come from. She won the reserve CC behind a fully mature bitch, who was again actually from the Archibalds, I think, Patsy. I think they got the ticket that day with a bitch who was, you know, sort of much older than this gorgeous youngster. And then when we were taking the pictures afterwards, it was amusing to hear that this lady had only come over to Birmingham because a friend of hers had a Labrador that she was very keen to qualify for Crufts, and she wanted a travelling companion. So, you know, she came along with her golden, and she obviously had quite a good trip.
Yeah.
And I think that's the last in my cut, isn't it? Yeah.
So you've all judged for many years. Which decade do you think was the strongest quality for the Golden Retriever in the UK, Frank?
Well, perhaps I wear rose-coloured spectacles and think that, you know, we've looked at dogs from the 60s there and the 70s. However, I'm not going to deny, I still think that the depth of quality in the Golden Retrievers in the UK is immense. I can't think, you know, we have very good dogs in some good dogs all around the world in every country. But for depth of quality, I think England is still first. And even when we go to Scandinavia, where the Scandinavian countries have wonderful Golden Retrievers, as does Germany and France, the influence of English bloodlines is very much to the fore. Yeah. So I think although I look back to the 70s and 80s and the 60s even, as a golden age of Golden Retrievers, there's still some very good dogs around now, okay?
Yeah. Andrew, when do you think was the strongest decade?
The 70s.
The 70s, yeah.
Yep.
Patsy? Patsy, can you hear us?
I think, as Frank pointed out, every decade that I've judged Golden Retrievers, I've found dogs that I like. I look for the positives, and I think there's some really good dogs now. There's some good breeders out there producing good dogs, and there always has been. And I think that, as Frank said, only he worded it differently with his rose-coloured glasses, I always say, it never rained on a Sunday when I was a child. And you look back and think, oh, wasn't that dog gorgeous? And then you looked at the picture and think, no, it blooming wasn't. Pictures can lie because it depends on where angle they're at. I would have loved to have seen that picture for Frida Marshall's, because I thought it was a dreadful picture and a blooming gorgeous bitch. So I would have liked to have seen that one in the flesh. I do think that really took my fancy. However, I do think that I can't, because I think there always is. I do think, and because you've got so many specialists who have hang-ups, that's why when they come in the group, you don't always notice the golden. And who was it that said the golden got third in the group at Crufts? And I saw that golden and thought on the television and thought, bloody hell, that is fantastic. Mm-hmm. So one of them just said that not so long ago.
Yeah, it was Frank, I think.
Which one of you was it?
I judged the pictures at Crufts 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
I thought that looked.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I thought it was outstanding that when it came in on the television. Now, just gorgeous, really lovely. Yeah.
So, which have been your most notable judging appointments and why, Andrew?
Well, the question was actually worded in the singular, so it was a very easy one for me, because it was Birmingham National 2017, and that was simply because I know that it was Muriel who had got me the appointment. Oh. And it was the show took place some time after she died, and it was a very emotional day in many ways, and I just hoped that she was sort of in some shape or form sitting on my shoulder. But that was very special for that reason alone.
That's lovely. Patsy, can you hear me?
Well, that picture you've got up, actually. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
That picture you have up at the moment was a very memorable occasion for me, because it was doing a club show, which I felt I had the respective Golden Retriever people to be invited, and a wonderful entry and wonderful dogs under me. And so that was very memorable. One that was memorable for the wrong reasons was Manchester a few years ago, which I won't go into further, but that was yeah.
Not so good.
A memorable day.
Okay. And Frank, your most memorable?
Well, I think...
oh, well, it was just for the wrong reason.
Right.
With a dog that behaved badly, and yeah, and it stood out in my mind and affected the whole ring for quite a few minutes. Oh gosh, I've said something I shouldn't have.
No,
it's everybody wondering what I'm talking about.
No, I was obviously judging the pictures at Crofts was fantastic for me.
Yeah,
wonderful classes. I remember the first class veteran bitch coming in, and they were just fantastic. And this beautiful dark-coloured bitch won. And when I looked at the catalogue later, you know, champions filled all those places. It was marvellous. I think 60-odd champions through the entry. And a wonderful working gun dog class as well. A beautiful bitch winning that. It was amazing to say depth of quality. Like Patsy, it's always, I feel, to be invited to judge club shows. And I've judged, I think, 6 club shows. And I should have been judging one last week, which is a great pity. I never got to the Southern. But I've had some very nice winners. I had a nice bitch Kodaka Cupcake winning in the
Northwest,
Northwest, yeah. I've had some very nice standoff somewhere. But judging the club shows, you'll see great depth of quality. So that's an honour. But you know, Crofts has to stand out for me. Thank you.
Great, yeah. So I think we've actually answered this next question. It was about judging in other countries, but you've all talked about the depth of quality still being in the UK. Has anybody got anything to add to that, or should we just skip on?
No, I think, I mean, personally,
well,
sorry, go on. You were going to say something, Patsy.
I was just going to say Scandinavia, particularly. And Sweden and Henrik obviously produces beautiful ones.
Yeah,
especially.
I mean, I you know, personally.
So I'll let you carry on, Andrew. Sorry.
Personally, I don't think any country necessarily stands out particularly, because I think you can find, you know, top quality dogs obviously still here in the UK, but throughout Scandinavia, and I think in recent years. The Mediterranean countries, Italy, Spain, Portugal, have actually produced some beautiful golden retrievers. Although, you know, there may not be the numbers of what sort of pleases our eye overall, you know, there are some very good dogs in the States and Canada.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah,
but you know, I think for sort of depth, certainly the apart from obviously the British dog, I think that, you know, the Mediterranean countries have come up so much in recent years as regards quality, not just in Goldens, in several breeds.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Frank, anything to add?
No, I you know, I said there's quality all around the world. The first time I went to Australia, I was very impressed. The second time I went, some people had experimented by using American dogs on English bred bitches, and that was a big disappointment. But last year at Adelaide Royal, nearly all of the classes were won by dogs from the Chaleur kennel, and they had fantastic, wonderful type. I don't know the lady, but that was the kennel name. And I think a lot of standoff blood in that as well. So there's quality all around the world. Scandinavia is always, as I say, Italy and France and Germany also. So quality around the world, yeah.
Great. So do you feel the breed has changed over the years? And if so, you know, in what way has it changed? And do you think these changes are deviation away from type? Do you want to start, Patsy?
I think that it's a common thing, isn't it? Everybody everybody knows everything about everything. You don't need to listen to the television. There's that many COVID experts on television or the radio or whatever, on the media. And it's the same with today. There's a lot of people show dogs for their ego trip without thought of why they're breeding. And so you've got an element of, you've got great dogs today, as you always have. But, you know, when we started out, all of three old things, we listened to people like Joan Tudor and Margaret Barnes and all these older people who had proved the worth. We listened to them, gleaned information and worked with it. And, you know, used dogs that were the right dogs, whether we like the owner of the person or not, were respectful. But nowadays, they use the best friend's dogs. And I've noticed that there are long, low Goldens. Not all of them. You can find real good quality throughout, still today, but that is a bugbear, that there are long and low ones around by people who are breeding for the wrong reasons. So somebody once said to me, they'd made the bitch, and I said, oh, what have you used? And they said the dog's name, and I said, oh, so why did you use him? And they said, because he's a lovely colour. I said, oh, funnily enough, I use a dog for his genes, not his colour. You know?
Yeah.
So there you go. That's my take.
Yeah. Frank?
Again, I may be wearing the wrong spectacles. And listen, when I come to judge golden retrievers, colour is the last thing that goes into my mind.
Absolutely.
I think, you know, in my book, I put at the end of every chapter a silhouette test where all of the dogs are blacked out, and you have to identify the breed from outline. And it's rather like when I judge golden retrievers, I don't take in the colour, you take in the shape. Okay, so I don't remember as many lighter coloured dogs back in the 70s. So people in the audience might say, you're quite wrong there, Frank. We've always had lots of light ones. That doesn't matter to me, but that's one interesting thing. What I do has altered is what has crept into many breeds, and that is over-angulation. Too much angulation. And I remember that in the sort of 80s or so, I don't know whether it was Anne Woodcock I was talking to about we must get more length and turn of upper arm. And that became an obsession to get the long upper arms, very important in angulation. But when it's exaggerated, you have the knock-on effect. We have over-angulation at the rear when the hocks, when there's too much turn of stifle, the lower thigh is exaggerated in length.
Yes.
And it lays the hocks way out behind the dog and gives a very, to the novice eye, a very impressive bend of stifle, but the hocks way out behind it. It's not functional.
So
when you get too much length in the upper arm, it has to have a knock-on effect on the length of the forearm, the bone that's and so you get the short, in my opinion, the shortening of the forearm in the front leg, which makes the front leg shorter. And I think perhaps in the past, in getting this over-angulation at both ends, you've shortened the legs and given this, you've led to an imbalance in the angulation of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank. Andrew.
Well, I mean, what I was about to say, I think, has pretty much been covered by my two colleagues. The first is obviously the domination of the paler colours, because the question asks how the breed has changed. And that is not a criticism, because, you know, most of the colours that win are certainly within the parameter of the breed standard. But I mean, the more serious change is the lack of overall correct balance, which Frank has gone into in great detail, because, you know, I do see far too many dogs that are short in leg, long in loin, and I mean, just adding to what he said about, you know, the exaggerated rear angulation. So often, you know, this manifests itself with, you know, with a predominance of sickle hocks. And I mean, in a breed like the Gold, where, you know, the sort of keynote is moderation all through, you know, an over-angulated rear with these sickle hocks where the, you know, the nails on the back pad, they don't actually touch the ground. You know, they're sort of suspended in midair.
Yeah.
Which obviously is a, you know, is a result of the exaggeration that Frank has described in greater detail than there's any need to go into, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, the predomination of the light colors, and obviously the change in balance.
It's quite altered the silhouette of some of the dogs, hasn't it?
Totally. I mean, I remember I was watching a gun dog group with a friend from overseas, and he pointed out to me that the proportions of the Clumber Spaniel and the Golden Retriever were virtually identical. And I mean, when it wasn't something that it hit me in that way, but when I did actually look, he was absolutely right.
So we're losing type if we're looking like a Columba.
Yeah, you are.
We think the body is too big and the leg is too short and the body's too long.
And the head's too exaggerated as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're going to look at that.
Well, I think it's a question of the limbs actually being too short for the balance. And I mean, the rib cage doesn't extend back as far as it should.
It is very, very interesting, I think, some of the changes that have progressed. And I do think that you're right, Frank, that it had some origin in the desire to improve certain points while totally ignoring the overall dog.
Yes.
You know, so, and that was sort of almost my kind of alludement about this standard maybe not being anchored in the moderation that you talk about, Andrew. You know, that big, you know, that good bone is big bone, whereas it's not, it's the correct bone for the dog, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's very hard to put measurements onto these things. And this is where you really need to train your eye to be able to see that balance and harmony and that classical outline, that silhouette that's so important.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as you know, when on one of the earlier questions, you asked about, you know, sort of our priorities, and I said to you, as far as I was concerned, the first thing was silhouette. And I mean, Frank makes much of silhouettes in his, you know, in his gun dog judging book. Because I mean, I remember when I was quite young, it was actually Hans Lehtinen from Finland who said to me, you know, when you've got a class of dogs in the ring, step right back and mentally paint them all black. Okay, in Golden Retrievers, you don't have the added complication of markings, but you do have a variation of color. And, you know, Hasse sort of drummed into me. He said, just look at them and just visualize those black silhouettes. And then your judging will soon fall into place. You can get, once you've done the silhouettes, then you can get into the detail.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you all for that. Yeah, it's very, very, very meaningful feedback from you guys. And it really just leads on, I think you probably answered this question about what we should be although we should be mindful of the overall dog, what points do you think current breeders should concentrate on now? I think you've all actually answered that in that last question, because it's kind of coming back, isn't it, into more moderation, if you like, and the dog as a active working dog with a good length of leg, correct bodily proportions. You've already sort of answered that question.
Sorry.
I think it's...
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's fundamentally, it's overall balance and also in particular hind movement.
Yeah.
I think that people should... Sorry. Have you finished, Andrew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on, Patsy, go on.
I think that people, you look at a breed standard, you can, I've read many breed standards, and half of them don't make bloody sense, quite frankly. Yeah. They use words in different ways. Yes. So I think that the breeders should not only look at standards, but talk to people who are in the know. Go to seminars. I keep saying this, and I'm not a seminar queen. I'm absolutely not. But if you go to and listen to people, if you listen to somebody that's done something in that breed and take on board what they're saying, you're going to learn a lot, because standards can be so ambiguous, and you can interpret them in different ways, and people don't know how. Half the time, they don't even know what the blooming word means in some of these blooming standards.
Patsy, I think Tom Horner said that standards are like the Lord's Prayer. You learn the words, but it takes a lifetime to.
Yes, exactly, and that is it. And breeders should stop thinking. If they got off this Facebook thing, I'm not on it, and so I'm probably talking out of turn here. But if they actually went up to people that they should be respecting, people that know what they're talking about, that are consistently producing quality dogs. That you don't always win because you're the best in bed. Sometimes you have a bit of knowledge as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. But let's move on, because I'm a bit conscious of time. Yeah. So, have you any advice to current UK exhibitors about the preparation of their dogs and their showmanship? Frank, if you want to start.
Yeah, I feel that I would like to see more people standing their dogs on a loose lead. And I think, a well-balanced dog can stand well. And I do think if a clever handler, an intelligent handler would say, I'm going to show off this dog's balance by training it to stand free.
Yeah.
The dogs which are long and low and over-angulated, there's a sloppiness about them when they stand loose. So when dogs come back from a move, I say, let it stand free. Yeah. Often the unbalanced ones don't look right standing loose. So if you've got a good dog, show it off and get into the habit of freestanding. Yeah. I'm not going to tell anyone how to trim their dogs, but the quality, there's lots of great presentation. But I don't like dogs cranked into shapes, overextended at the back. I don't like dogs to be exaggerated by their handlers. No. I do like them. So my plea would be more freestanding, please.
Yeah. Andrew?
Well, yes, 100% in agreement with what Frank says. People who've shown under me know that I like to see dogs move. And when they've completed the movement pattern, I like them to just walk into a stack and stand on a loose lead. The thing that a lot of exhibitors don't seem to understand is that if their dogs were actually trained and schooled to show free on a loose lead, just responding to a little bit of bait or whatever, they actually have an instant advantage under 90% of the judges. And, sort of the topping and tailing would never be necessary. They look so much better. The better constructed dogs are seen to advantage. The worst constructed dogs, reveal their faults for all, which is probably why the handlers are so keen to get them topped and tailed. So yes, loose lead, free show, train them that way. As your question asks about advice to UK exhibitors on preparation, none whatsoever, because I think that 99% of our show dogs in the UK are beautifully prepared, beautifully presented, without being excessively barbered. So, there's no criticism in that area at all. It's just the fact, more people should realize how much of an advantage they could have if their dogs were just schooled to stand there and show free.
Thank you, Andrew. Patsy?
All of what has been said, but remember that you get clean hands when you judge Goldens generally. They're presented beautifully. But don't forget, the judge is going to put his hands on that dog and he wants muscle. So get yourself out and exercise your dog.
Yeah, in harder condition. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing, actually, because it's something I perhaps a little bit obsessive about, is that about top lines. I would suggest that many people do not get someone else to move their dogs so they can watch their dogs to see the judge's eye view. So sometimes, you know, if you live by yourself or you don't have anyone to move your dogs for you, if people got a friend to move their dogs to see how they looked, it would give them the judge's eye view, and where they would know how to improve it, how to improve the outline. Certainly, I hate top lines. Top lines tell tales. Top lines tell such a lot about construction, balance, and condition. And I think a dog which loses its top line on the move, for me, it's a glaring fault which takes away a lot of the quality of the dog. And I think if people looked at their dogs moving, it would sort of open them up to improving their dogs. Certainly, good condition and muscles, as Patsy's just said, very important. A dog should hold itself and carry itself well. It's a big class winner for me. Dogs which carry themselves and hold their top line.
Yeah. Super. So, the big question in the UK, Golden Retriever is a numerically strong breed. So why do they not do better in the group judging? Andrew, do you want to start off because you're smiling?
Well, to be honest, I mean, the number of times, you know, like Frank, I you know, do occasionally commentate on the groups at championship shows. And, you know, on numerous occasions, I've sort of heard myself saying, and this is the best of breed Golden Retriever that came through from 260 dogs under 2 judges. It was Mr. and Mrs. da-di-da-di-da-di-da-di. And then you can see the dog, you know, sort of disappearing from the table, rubbing its hocks. And I genuinely think that, you know, you have a lot of dogs that come through from the breeder judges whose overall movement is just not up to par. And this, I think, is coupled quite strongly with Patsy's earlier point. You know, the number of Golden Retrievers, when you think of the number of dogs that you get at a championship show, as you are going over the dogs, you know, clean and tidy though they may be, so many of them lack muscle tone. And it's quite funny, you know, you get so used to getting your hands on these dogs' hindquarters that are like sort of uncooked chicken breasts. And then all of a sudden, you get your hands on something and you know, you do, my God, muscle, you know. I mean, it's a shock to the system when a dog, you know, is not overbuilt, but is in beautiful muscular condition. And, you know, I mean, I don't know whether this is down to exercise primarily. I think certainly in a lot of breeds, our dogs are not exercised as much as they should be. And I'm talking about, you know, a combination of free exercise and road work. But I think, you know, if you want to build muscle on a dog, you obviously have to give it an amount of exercise. And whilst, you know, you can improve bad movement, I think with musculature, obviously a dog that is badly constructed, you know, you're never going to make it perfectly constructed. You're just going to be able to improve the movement up to a point. But as far as the group thing is concerned, you know, a large number of your group judges will not be judges who award certificates in the breed, because that is the nature of our system. And, you know, they will therefore probably be falling back on basic requirements, you know, one of which is, you know, sound movement, parallel up and down, reach and drive, you know, without getting into finer breed details, perhaps. And I mean, if you send them a dog in, you know, that's going to be sort of flapping its elbows or rubbing its hocks, then it ain't getting in the cut. Simple as that.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Patsy.
Basically, breed specialists with an agenda. Controversial, but true.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the main things. As you said, the other year, go back to that bitch of Frank's in the group at Crufts, outstanding.
Mm. Mm.
You know, they get on a roll, and a lot of one breed judges, not all of them, I'm talking, you know, not everybody, but there's a lot of one breed judges like to follow a pattern.
Yeah.
And you know, who is judging next week? And well, I don't put it down, it's got 17 tickets. They had like a bucket, but it's got 17 tickets.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that comes into it in a big way. I think you can, you know, a lot of golden, yeah, enough.
Yeah. Thank you, Patsy. I think that's very pertinent, that people within the breed, there's a lot of incestuousness that makes it bad. Whether I always think judges fall into the good, the bad, and the ugly, and some of the ugliness is the following my leader, not having confidence, not having full knowledge, playing a political game, and all of those kind of things really. It does wear a breed down, and I think it's worn us down to the point that now, even when a good dog does go through in the group, people just look at it and think maybe, well, it's the golden retriever, it's going to go to sleep in a minute, or it's not going to move well, or, you know, and there are some sort of prior thoughts, if you like. But anyway, Frank, would you like to tell us why you think we don't do better in the group?
I'm not sure. It's become quite easy for non-specialist judges to criticize golden retrievers by just saying no legs, no legs. However, which is rather sad, because I gave a group to a golden retriever at Windsor. I think Windsor, or 2 years ago. I think he was called. Was he called Pied Piper or something like that? Is there a dog called Pied Piper? Or
yeah, but he was much more than a couple of years ago. He would have been 20.
Right. Well, it was I thought him a very nice dog, and owned by a foreign lady, I think, who lives in London. I don't know. He's a good dog. There are good dogs out there. It's become a cliche for non-specialists to say, "Oh, no legs, no legs." They should look at the dogs. However, sometimes dogs that are sent forward are a composite of qualities of like good shoulders, nice head, when really at group level, a dog has to have real full picture appeal to win a group, and style on them, and style and soundness on the move. And that's what, in the final analysis, at group level, showmanship and carriage does help. And sometimes the dogs that come in don't quite have it,
Yeah. Great.
An affinity with the handler. It should be the whole picture.
Yeah.
But it's got to be soundness as well.
Yeah, that perfect performance. Yeah. I'm going to actually skip over the next two questions because you've already talked a lot about, you know, of judging and advice for judges and things about watching, talking to people. So I think we should, because we've been talking now for quite a long time, and you'll start to get tired shortly and hungry. I think.
Can I say, Penny? You know, I'm on a time scale here. I have to go soon. I'm sorry about this. So if there's any questions from me, could I answer them first? Because I don't like to I don't want people to think I've skipped off. I did have a prior engagement. Yeah,
it's all right. So what I'd just like to do is thank everybody. Thank the three of you for coming and talking to us very honestly and openly about our breed. We are all passionately in love with them, and we want to be able to work to improve the breed, and having an outside honest view, I think, can only be valuable in the long term. So honestly, the three of you have been absolutely fantastic, and I really appreciate you giving us our time today. And I'd like to thank all of the audience for joining us. And I hope that you've enjoyed it. We're going to open the chat in a minute, but on behalf of Midland Golden, thank you everybody for joining us again on our Tea Time chat. And again, many thanks to Anna and Ricardo who have IT'd for us, and without all the support that we've had from them, this wouldn't have been possible. So,
very true. Very
yes,
true.
yes, thank you. Thank you for having us.
The chat is already open and you already have some questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I would like to know what's necessary to your best of breed dog becoming NA eventual all breeds best in show winner. What are the points more impressed? Thank you. And that's from Cristano. So I think that's, anybody'd like to answer that? I think it's about what key points you would look for in a golden retriever to be able to win best in show at an all breeds championship show.
I think there's a sort of veritable can of worms about to be opened here. For the simple reason that, I mean, I don't know the questioner and I don't quite know the background or the priority, whether it's a golden, I presume it's a golden retriever person. You know, let us not forget that when we're judging best of breed, that is the wording on the card, best of breed. It doesn't say best bet for the group. And I think there's a danger in some exhibitors that they are looking for, you know, a sort of flash and dash dog for the group. And, you know, the priority of the breed judge has to be surely to find the dog that closest meets the breed standard. And, you know, sometimes dogs in all sorts of breeds, but golden retrievers are included, you know, can become eye-catching by virtue of some degree of exaggeration. And, you know, what some people might think, well, that's an attractive quality to go into a group, you know, if it's got a neck like a giraffe or whatever. But it's not, you know, we have to produce, you know, the best of breed winner has to be the best possible example of the breed. And I think if your group and best in show judges are sufficiently knowledgeable, they will appreciate a dog that has breed type construction
because my battery's so low,
without necessarily wanting that extra, you know, glamour, for want of a better word.
Thank you for that, Andrew. So Andrew Cooper says, well done, Midland Golden. Thank you, Patsy, Frank and Andrew, for giving us your time. Bentham to everybody. The dog Frank is talking about is multi-champion Lingalore Pied Piper at Mere Pier, which was Windsor 2018. Frank.
I'm glad someone keeps my record book for me.
Thank you for that, Bentham. Yeah, David Elcon, it's been a really, really excellent. Thank you so much for allowing me to join. Very informative about your lovely breed. You're welcome. Beta. Thank you so much for your valuable time and wonderful remarks. Nicola, another excellent forum from Midland Golden. Thanks to all concerned for this excellent opportunity. Ronnie says thank you. And Ingram, thank you very much for a very interesting discussion. Well done to all. Nikki, great session once again. Many thanks to Midland Golden and the respective presenters for their time and for sharing their knowledge and experience. Daniela, thank you for a great afternoon, really informative and well organised. Jane Wild, thank you everyone, very interesting and thought-provoking. Ravakar, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful hearing your experiences. Annette, thank you all-rounders for a lovely chat. I really like your thoughts on over-angulation, short legs and long body. So do we. So thank you to the three excellent views, well-informed information that confirms all I have believed in all breed judging. Big respect to knowledge shared, appreciated. Thank you, Penny, for the depth of questions. Oh, you're welcome. Melanie, loved it. Thank you. Thanks a lot to everybody. Sure. I would also like to say that the gun dog group in the UK is a very strong group, so not easy at all for any breed to come to the boards. Any comments about that? It is a strong group, isn't it? The gun dog group. Yeah. Thank you all three for an amazing interview with so many brilliant points that were spot on and really honest. Hopefully lots of breeders watching it and will learn from it. Thanks from Henrik and Sjord in Sweden. Oh, hi, Henrik.
Hi, Henrik.
Hi. Much admired and knowledgeable speakers could listen for many more hours to them. And we so enjoyed your talk, Henrik. We really did. Thank you. Bentham, thank you so much from Ben and Fiona. Oh, it's Bentham.
Oh, right.
Bentham. Ben and Fiona from up your way.
Yes.
Frank, yeah. For another superb, fascinating afternoon. You're welcome.
It's been really good.
Yeah,
I'm sure we all like talking about dogs, and so thanks for inviting me. Now I have to say that I have to leave now, and I'm very sorry to leave early. Thank you all for a nice Sunday afternoon tea time. Thank you all.
Okay, Frank. Cheerio.
Bye, Frank.
Bye, Frank. See you soon.
Yeah. Gareth, thank you all for your time. My question is regarding judging. Goldens are not my breed, but a breed I have an interest in. My question is, does an all-round judge need to own, breed, or campaign multiple breeds to judge with knowledgeable in multiple breeds? Patsy?
No, what they need to do, can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you, Patsy.
Oh, that's all right then, because my battery was going low, so I had to move. What you need to do is go to seminars. Bloody hell, I keep saying this, and I wish I didn't.
Patsy, you sound like an academic, and you're not.
I know, and I'm not. I'm absolutely not. But far from it, actually. Wing and prayers me. But actually, you need to go and learn. You need to listen. Ask people if you can go to the kennels. But actually, if you go, you learn something every single time you go, and it is worthwhile. And you've got to put yourself. To achieve, you've got to put yourself out. To achieve as a breeder, to achieve as a judge, to achieve in life, you have to put yourself out. You have to get off your bum, get out there, and learn. You don't have to learn academically, because I didn't.
No.
Right. Have you finished there? Have you finished there, Pat?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. In the perfect world, everyone would have owned every breed, because nothing teaches you about a breed like living with it.
Yeah, but if you did that, Andrew, you would forget about half of the breeds. If you lived with more.
Yeah.
But it does give you an insight if you actually live with the breed. It is completely not practical. Of course, it's not practical. However, there is nothing like talking to and studying with real breed specialist judges. And I made the distinction earlier between breeder judges and breed specialists. Now, Patsy, you will remember
Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can.
I don't know whether it was Frank that was the background noise.
All right.
Okay. Patsy, you'll remember quite a few years ago, you were in the audience when I interviewed Marion Spavin for a memorable audience over the City of Birmingham weekend. Definitely. And when we came to the end of the interview, one of the questions I asked Marion was, when did she last have an embryo judge ask if they could visit the kennel to look at the dogs and ask questions about the dogs? And she couldn't remember.
Yeah.
In the audience that night, there was yourself, there was Mike Gadsby, Ken Sinclair, Francis Kral, and several other what I would call large-scale breeders. Erica Jays, Sandlands Labradors. And we then turned the question to the audience. And none of you could remember anyone actually calling up and saying, look, I'm about to do Weimaraners at an open show. Can I come to your kennel? And people don't do it.
No.
Now, we unfortunately, we don't have the number of large kennels that we used to, but those breeders exist. But unfortunately, the thinking has drifted away from going to the people who know the subject best, and that is the top breeders.
Yeah, because you're not liked if you produce good dogs time after time. You're not liked. It's
Well, I don't think popularity comes into the equation, Patsy. I mean, I think we've now, because we have, developed a sort of seminar culture, and I mean, today is testimony to that. Yeah. This is a very, very valuable learning tool, but nothing can substitute for actually going to those few breeders who have a number of dogs and saying, well, explain to me, Patsy, what you say that this dog has a better head than that one. Tell me why.
Yes, exactly.
And I mean, you learn so much. I mean, I remember, some of my earliest trips to Sandylands when Gwen Broadley would just stand there, outside the paddock, and Erica would be, there with a variety of Labradors, and Gwen would explain, the subtle points that contributed to the breed type that we established was so important earlier on. And I mean, and do it so simply in a way, Gwen would probably have died if anyone had asked her to actually give a breed seminar. Yeah. But she could explain in very simple terms what was important and the essence of a breed, particularly her own.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is, Andrew, yes, I totally agree that we can't own a wide range of different breeds, but we can spend time with them. As you say, speaking to the breeders, watching them at the breed shows, and just spending some general time around those dogs. They're all such valuable learning things. Anyway, let's push on. Unfortunately, we've got about 32.
Oh my God.
Huge thank you to Midland. That's from Petra. To all of the speakers, and a very informative afternoon. Ruth, Barbara, to everybody.
I'm getting some bad feedback from people here that it's going on a bit. They need to communicate.
Penny,
so if we've got some questions.
Yeah. Penny, maybe you could sort of skip all those wonderful thank yous.
Yeah, and just give us a question.
Because we can read them afterwards. But if there are any questions, that might be more pertinent.
Ruth Barber says, the point has been made that judges don't sometimes seem to put their hands on key points. How could judges' training be improved to correct this?
I don't know how to answer that other than that you have it all in place. Why are people not taking it in? Because the Kennel Club have it in place, points of a dog and all these sorts of things. So why can't people? I've done seminars and I actually physically put my hands where they should do it. And somebody comes out and, oh yeah, they've got all the answers. They go away, and then when they judge, they don't do it. So I don't know the answer to that.
I think, Patsy, that there's a lot of training, but there isn't an exit exam. And I actually do believe that you wouldn't get through in a professional life with somebody not being checked, that actually that's where you put your hands. Demonstrate where those shoulders are, demonstrate where the loin
Yes, exactly. But they can do it in the exam, but then they come out and you watch them in the ring and they don't do it. And you could have marshals like they have in America, where they come up and say, you did this wrong or you did that wrong. But we're such an honest state that we'd be hung, drawn and quartered if we did that, because it'd be against their human rights or whatever it is. Now I'm getting into strange waters.
Andrew, any comments from you, Farouk?
Well, no, I mean, the structure is there. I mean, in recent years, the Kennel Club have sort of...
Absolutely.
They've grasped the nettle of a complete lack of any education. And everything depends on, the point that has been made there by Ruth is, first of all, it depends on the caliber of the trainer, that the trainer can actually convey things effectively. And it depends on the aptitude of the student and the fact that they can actually transport what they've learned at a seminar or whatever day they call them these days, and actually put that into practice in the ring.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the number of people I've seen, fly through, at sort of judges development program sessions, because they've sort of like crammed a breed for a day. But 6 months later, it's absolutely completely forgotten. I mean, it was always my thinking, and I mean, I got shouted down for it at the time, that when people went on what was then the judges development program, any kind of testing or examination should be months later, not that afternoon. And just see if those people had actually absorbed what they'd been taught.
Yeah.
The other thing that you can't teach is honesty and tenacity.
No, that's right.
Well,
those are personal qualities
that's another webinar in itself.
Oh, sorry, Andrew. Right. Paco, how is it possible that there are so many all-rounders so young now getting to be all-rounders too quickly? When I
don't think he's talking about the UK.
About Britain.
No, he's not. He's Spanish.
No, he's definitely not talking about Britain. But I mean, I have heard when you're judging abroad and you sat with the panel and they say I don't mean the country he's come from, but they say some of the more obscure countries, they buy their best in show license.
Yes.
Somebody said once that this guy bought it for his wife.
Yeah.
And you've done it to see some of them. There's some magnificent. I love it when I go abroad, sitting, listening and discussing dogs. It's just fabulous. And because you can't go home, you've the time to do it. But you do look at some of them and think, how the bloody hell did they,
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me, sorry.
I think in the UK, we're in a very different situation. And I think that we will have all rounders in the future, because, I mean, I've come from a professional background and my dogs have been my hobby. I've not been able to commit time. And now that they changed the judging regime, a lot of what I've already done will just be wiped out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and because now I'm getting old, I'm not going to, I probably wouldn't even make the gun dog group now.
Yeah.
And so,
but I mean,
who's going to replace people like Val Foss, who's retired from judging some of the floor breeds, there aren't going to be the people coming through with that depth of knowledge.
No, it is difficult because I think we probably had, I must have had mentors that I didn't even know I'd got.
Yeah.
Patsy, we didn't realise they were mentors.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't, Andrew, you're right. But we did have people who, but there again, when you look at we've talked to big kennels nowadays, you're ostracized if you've got a big kennel. We don't have a big kennel anymore, but we used to have like 38 Weimaraners running together. I don't know if you could do it now because society has changed so much.
Yeah. But I mean, we would, when we took the time to speak to these revered people, I mean, I don't actually remember using. I don't remember the word mentor being used in a dog sense when I was in my teens. However, I mean, as an example, I remember going to a Labrador Club of Wales Championship show. It was held at Barry Memorial Hall, and Mrs. Broadley was there. And I mean, I knew her sort of vaguely through her nephew, Alan Taylor. And I asked if I could sit ringside with her and watch the judging. And I sat there from minor puppy dog to open bitch. And Gwen very quietly discussed the dog. She asked occasional questions. And let me tell you, I learned more that day than I would ever have done at a dozen breed seminars. Because, you know, the Gwen was just so steeped in the breed.
But you wanted to learn.
But, well, of course, of course. But as is often the danger with these events, we have, of course, gone slightly off subject and not answered your friend's question.
Yeah.
Which was?
Which was, why are there so many young all-rounders these days?
Yeah.
Well, abroad, that's what I did answer it.
Yeah. We've got one last question, and then let's call it a day, because I know the clock.
Yeah, I'm knackered, and they're all shouting for me from a distance.
Okay. And actually, I would answer this just with a one word. Should excellent construction justify the placement of the dog with not so perfect temperament? And in my breed,
no.
If they have not got the perfect golden temperament, you should, apart from the odd youngster that may have a wobble as they're going through those sorts of periods of growth, you should never, ever, you can never justify putting a dog up without a perfect temperament.
When I said that one of my most notable judging appointments of Goldens was at Manchester for the wrong reasons, ask somebody and they will explain what. Somebody who was there.
It's the golden fit of a golden retriever, and if they have not got the temperament, they are not a golden retriever.
Can I just say one thing to finish? The point of what we do is because most dogs live in a family, as part of a family, and so construction, soundness, health, temperament are what we look for as judges, is what actually you are providing to the general public. When you're breeding a crossbred, you don't know what you're going to get. That's it.
Andrew, anything else to add to that?
Well, if you're on a sort of wrap-up session, what I would say is, and it was something that I would have trotted out on your last question, but we'd sort of already covered most of that. And that's merely to pass on, because I'm a great believer in passing on advice that was passed on to me, because that's how we maintain things. And my mentor, idol, was not just in dogs, but in life in general, was a gentleman called Nigel Aubrey-Jones, who some of you may have heard of, if not know. He was a genius. He was a marvelous dog person. He was just a wonderful inspiration. And the best piece of advice that he ever gave to me was, judge as if this is your last appointment and the one you want to be remembered for. Because he said, what happens with a lot of these judges, particularly breeder judges, they get approved for their first set of CCs. They get in the middle of the ring. They know how every dog is bred, what everything has won, who's judging their dog next week, next month, whatever. And there is a temptation. There's a temptation in some cases. Well, I know that dog should win, but she's judging me next week, or this is by my. So I'm gonna do convenience judging. But next time I do it, I'm going to do it absolutely straight. And he said, the minute you do it wrong, you'll never do it right.
Doomed, aren't you? You're doomed, Andrew, because you'll
So-
never do it right.
So as I said, you know, when it comes to sort of advice being passed on, judge as if this is your last appointment and the one you want to be remembered for. And if you actually bear that in mind, you won't go far wrong.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Pearls of wisdom, Andrew.
Well, they were Nigel's, not mine. I'm just passing them
Yes,
on.
but you're passing them on, and that's what all of us do within the dog game.
Hopefully,
I
yeah.
learned from somebody, you pass your knowledge on to somebody else.
Hopefully,
And
you'd like to,
yeah,
for the right reasons.
for the right reasons, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we are custodians of our breeds.
Sure.
Totally.
And we start somewhere and we'll end somewhere and somebody else will take over. And we should
Definitely.
leave that breed as good or better than when we found it.
Definitely.
Totally, yeah.
Patsy, anything else from you, my love?
No, I don't think so. I think that's it. I think it's all been said, hasn't it? And
Yeah,
it's been a great
fantastic.
afternoon. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you to everybody for all their very kind comments. And hope I didn't swear too much.
Oh, go on with you. Thank you both. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Patsy, and also thank you, Frank. I know obviously you've gone.
Yeah.
And Anna, you're a star. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Anna and Ricardo.
Yeah.
They've been really good and made it so much easier. And Andrew, it's been great to be in your company, darling. And
Nice
Frank as well.
to see you after so long, Patsy.
Absolutely. Did you recognise me with my white hair?
I certainly did. I certainly did. Yeah.
It's the lockdown
Sure.
look, isn't it? I've gone great too. So yeah, take care and thank you very much, everybody, and thank you. For
Okay.
Okay. Well.
Thank you.
Thanks to the club, and good luck for future sessions. And
Yeah.
Again, thanks for mainly to Ricardo, of course, for doing such a fabulous job on making the Joan Tudor interview so easily accessible.
I'm going to watch that this week.
And so clear.
Yeah, I'm sure.
He did a great job.
Andrew, everybody's going to enjoy that, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad that the committee agreed to putting it on for public.
Well done, Midland Committee.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you're doing the breeders service, and actually Tim Hutchings made a very interesting comment, which unusually for Tim was totally devoid of sarcasm, when he said that Joan has such the most marvelous speaking voice.
Oh, yeah.
And she did. I mean, you know, she is so easy to listen to.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that's a treat for them in store, isn't it? If they haven't already listened
to it.
So thank you, everybody, once again. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.